allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, if you can call the roll, please.
Councilor Perry?
Present.
Councilor Edwards?
Present.
Councilor Janik?
Present.
Councilor Edwards?
Present.
Councilor Burk?
Present.
Councilor deMedeiros and Councilor Melbourne are absent.
Moving to the consent agenda, we have approval of the minutes for our special meeting on May 13th, regular meeting on May 22nd, exec session on May 22nd, special meeting on June 5th. Acknowledging receipt of minutes from the Board of Canvassers, one of those, and Personnel Board 4. Acknowledgement of correspondence from the Town of Warren regarding a resolution in support of legislation authorizing financing for school construction and/or renovation. And acknowledge receipt of reports from the Town Administrator, the monthly reports for April and May, Town Administrator, Police and Fire Department overtime reports for May, and Personnel Board 2022 Annual Report. And then finally, DPW Director Rogers requests permission to submit RIPDES MS4 2022 Annual Report to our IDEM. Okay, is Rick here? I just want to know what all that stands for. Do you know what all that stands for? I know it's in here, but, oh, here's Rick. We'll put him on the spot. Rick, I need you to translate RIPDES MS4. Rhode Island.
Yes, that's the municipal storm system.
Right, but what does DES stand for? Rhode Island Public RIPDES.
Oh, Rhode Island's point discharge elimination system.
Thank you. And MS4 is stormwater is the S?
Yes, stormwater.
Municipal stormwater?
Yes,
Okay.
stormwater sewer.
Okay, so 2022 annual report to DEM. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, motion to approve the consent agenda.
Does anybody have anything to remove? No? Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Moving on. So we have one public comment. Jamie, you just have amendment. I'm not sure what you're meaning. If you want to come up. You have 3 minutes.
I sit down?
You can sit or stand, whichever you prefer.
I guess closer. Hi, I just wanted to
Yeah,
urge,
name and,
oh, sorry, Jamie French. I live at 48 Craig Avenue. And I wanted to, I just wanted to say that I think that the council should vote for the money for the amendment for the crematorium to discuss whether or not we should write it out of all zones. I know that it was mentioned that the planning department that maybe we could change zonings and put it in our Stafford Pond watershed. And I think that that is a really bad idea to put a crematorium into a watershed, especially our drinking water. And so it really needs to be discussed, and we have to hear. But and it was also said that we don't have any more places in Tiverton to bury bodies, and so a crematorium would be a necessity. And from what I can tell, there's a lot of years left at Pecasset Hill. Amicable just opened up, I understand, the back of their cemetery. And if we're going to be changing zoning for anything, I'm sure we could always change some zoning to build a new cemetery. So I don't feel that a crematorium is a necessity. And so I think that we really need to keep on this subject and provide the funding it needs for the public notice. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest that we move a couple items from 8, 8L and M specifically, and I'll tell you why. I want to make sure I have the right numbers. Yes, because those two items extend the dates. Well, L gives a definite extension for us to decide on of December 31st of this year. for the public safety complex. And M does not have a definitive date, but suggests that we move that date too. And the reason is we have appointments for those committees coming up, and they all are ending on the dates of the original resolutions. So I think rather than have people come back and have to do that again later, probably makes sense to deal with the dates. I'll entertain a motion to move those items.
So moved, and it was 8L and M.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, those in favor of moving? Okay, so we're going to go to 8L. Let's find it. So 8L is moving the date of the end date of the Public Safety Complex Committee from the current date of August 1st to a new suggested date by the police chief of December 31st. Any-
So moved.
Councilor Edwards, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilor Edwards, seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, so that's now December 31st. And then we did not put a specific date on the other one. I would actually suggest that we look at that for possibly February 1st of 2024.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, so that's 2/1/2024, thank you. So going back to the main agenda, our next item of business.
Mr. President?
I'm sorry?
There's actually two dates
Oh, for the first one?
for the
Yes.
second one. There's,
So, yes, the first date is for when it's due to the Economic Development Committee, and then we gave it 2 months after that. So if we're okay with that first date of 2/1 being for getting it to the EDC, and then perhaps April 1st for the final date?
So moved.
Yeah, second.
second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, thank you. 2/1 and 4/1. Okay. So on to appointments and resignations. I'm going to acknowledge the resignation with regret of Bobby Joe Harris from the Board of Canvassers effective 6/6/2023. I just want to note, I've had the privilege of knowing Bobby Joe, I think, since I moved into town. We're close to it, and many people know him well. He's done a lot for this town on a variety of boards and commissions, but he's been a longtime member of the Board of Canvassers and has really done a good job with that board and leading that board to help ensure that we have good, effective, free, and fair elections in Tiverton. So it's with great regret. I have a motion to accept that resignation with regrets.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? And we should probably put that on our next agenda to fill that spot, or think about it. We'll talk about it at the next agenda meeting. First, we have the Zoning Revision Committee. We have a not a two-member board, 2 members from the general public, correct? It's more than a 2-member board. For 2-year terms, we have 2 vacancies. We have one before us, Susan Anderson. Susan, if you want to come on up. And this one ends on 5/7/2025. Susan, if you can tell us a little bit, you did provide us with information, but tell us a little bit about why you are interested in serving on this committee.
Well, it's been long overdue. Like, it should have been done in 2018 when the comprehensive plan was redone. So, and I've been to all the planning board meetings and seen and heard the changes that, oh, this should have been here, this should have been here, and yeah, it's just been overdue. So I'm quite familiar with the comprehensive plan, as you all know. So I feel like I'm a good choice for a candidate for this committee to make sure that
And
Well,
just to note, you're a retired engineer?
Yeah.
You've been on the Open Space and Stonebridge Task Force, the Historic Preservation Advisory as the chair, secretary of Tiverton Historical Cemeteries, and on the board of directors of the Tiverton Historical Societies. And all that in the short time you've been in town of 25 years. Any questions for Susan?
Not a question, just a statement. Susan, a regular at all the board, building committee, or not building committee,
Planning board.
zoning board, and,
I don't go to all the zoning board, just the ones that,
well, you go to a lot of them.
yeah.
And the planning board, and she is perfectly aware of a lot of the issues.
And I'll just jump on that, and you can quote all of the ordinances and zoning without even opening the book. So I think you're such a perfect candidate. I was so excited to see that you applied for this. So I
Yeah.
think you'll be
I
awesome
know
on
I
it.
shouldn't, but because of all the committees I'm on, but this is important. It needs to be done.
Yeah.
We have two positions. We have one applicant thus far. So I would suggest that we not, unless folks want to, waive our rule of waiting and wait till our next meeting, see if we have one more applicant or more than one more applicant before we take action.
Mr. Chair, how long have we advertised this for?
Just,
It was open-ended.
Okay.
right, but when did we start advertising? This was recent, wasn't it?
Well, I applied, I think the day after it was in the paper, I applied, what, the 31st?
Yeah, so this is June 1st is when we have it
Yeah.
stamped, received.
Yeah.
So this one has not been advertised for as long as the
Okay.
other two.
Then I'm perfectly fine waiting till next meeting.
Okay. I'd like to suggest let's see how many, if we get other applicants before we close the date. All right, thank you, Susan.
Don't change your mind while you're waiting.
Next up is also for the Zoning Revision Committee, appointment of Planning Board recommended member. One, Patricia Hilton, 99 Peaceful Way, request appointment for a term ending 5/7/2025. And as Trish comes up, we have had this informal policy of having members, people interested in serving on any of these types of committees or any of the boards and commissions to come and speak to us, which is great. Question becomes, for me, is that something we still want to hold true to for when we are asking for another body, official body in town, so in this case, the planning board, to recommend to us a member or two members, however it might be, for the respective committee, for that person to come before us, because it's the recommendation of that committee. So, go ahead, Jay.
Since I'm the one who made the most noise about having people come before us, I think in this particular type of case, the answer would be no. We've already interviewed them once already for the position they're in, and it's a consensus of their board or committee that they are the best person to fill the slot. So I don't think we need to do it.
And I don't know that we can, it's an informal policy that we have. We don't have a written policy on it, so it's more of just us considering that going forward. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair, I wholeheartedly agree. If we ask the planning board for their recommendation and the planning board says, former counselor, former President Hilton is who should be representing, we should just rubber stamp it, because it's not like it's not our position to tell the committee who their representative should be in this process. So I'm assuming that we need a formal, motion to appoint
Yes.
Madam President Hilton to the committee. So I'd like to take the opportunity to make that motion now.
And I will second that.
You have a motion and a second on the floor? See, I told you to be quick. Any discussion?
One last bit of discussion. Having had the privilege of working with, Madam President Hilton, you're never going to get away from that title. She knows more about zoning and water rights and anything else than like anybody else in this town. So I think she's going to be perfect for the role.
Agreed.
Celebrity procedure.
If you want to know about water rights on like one of our ponds going back like 400 years.
Really useful skill.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
And Tom, if you want to come on up, our next item is Conservation Commission. It's a 7-member board, 3-year terms. We have 3 vacancies, and Thomas Fromatowski from 17 Bowden Road requests a reappointment for a term ending 4/15/2026. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. I guess I'd say that I've been on this board quite a while, and COVID hit us pretty hard. Had trouble getting quorums and getting people together, so I really would like to have one more term to try to get us back together now that things are over, the emergency's over, hopefully, and never going to happen again. And there's still some unfinished business, too, that we need to do, so I think boards operate better when they have a variety of different lengths of service, because people remember the past. Even it helps the town too get calls from the clerk and other people saying, what did we do 15 years ago about this? So hopefully you can educate some of the newer people that we're going to get, and maybe move on to something else a little later.
Oh, thank you, and I appreciate all your service on this commission in other ways, and to town too, but I see you often walking the streets on
Picking
the
up the
north end
litter.
of town.
Yeah, right, yeah.
During the daytime, picking up litter,
Yep.
all the time, and so you take the role very seriously, and that's much needed. Any discussion on Tom?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion we waive our policy and appoint this evening, given the fact that there are 3 vacancies, so I'd like to make sure there's a quorum.
Second.
Got a motion and a second from Councilor Janik for the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Thank you.
Congratulations, Tom.
And
Thank
with that,
you.
I'd
Wait
like
a minute, we
to,
just, yeah.
yeah,
That was just to waive the
I'd like to
policy.
make, I'd like to make a motion to,
Now we're going to go for you. Motion
Thought I got away with that.
to appoint
Guess I
Tom.
didn't.
I'd also like to make a motion to reappoint Thomas Ramatowski, 17 Bowdoin Road, to the Conservation Commission with a term ending 4/15/2026.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
All
Now,
right, now we can
No.
go. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll do it for you.
now we are moving on to an opening on the Budget Committee that was created by a recent resignation. It's a 7-member board, 4-year terms, 1 vacancy, and before us is Brendan J. Andrade of 111 Ash Avenue, who requests an appointment to 11/2 of 2026. Is Brendan here? Okay, I'm going to suggest we move this on to our next agenda then. Is everybody okay with that?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? All right. And then we have the North End and Industrial Business Park Advisory Subcommittee, 4 members, 4 vacancies. I am going to suggest, well, that all of the dates that we have here coincide with the dates that we just moved them to, so it would be 4/1 of 2024. And we can do that as we make any appointments. Now, everybody on this list except for Sharon Koros has been interviewed by us. Jeannie informed me that Ms. Koros is at a wedding in Italy, so she cannot be here tonight. So the question is, do we wish to wait to be able to interview her at our next meeting? The applications are closed now for this, correct?
Mr. Chair, I think given the fact that we had the opportunity to speak with all the other applicants, it would be unfair for us to make an appointment tonight without at least speaking to this final applicant. So I'd make a motion that we move 6F to the next agenda.
And can you just suggest that we, in that motion, we change the dates to 4/1/24?
Correct, yes. With the dates amended to the proper
Yep.
dates.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have a question.
Yes.
It does not say here anyway to appoint,
Oh, you're right.
possible appoint, so
No.
we couldn't appoint
No, yeah,
anyway?
discussion and possible votes.
Top. It's at the
Oh,
section
okay,
6.
all right.
Yeah. Yeah. That way they don't have to retype it every time
Okay,
or cut and
that's
paste
fine.
each time. And I will note that, because I see Brian, I see Andrea, I see Jamie, Cheryl, I'm not sure if she's here, and I've only seen her once, I'm not sure if she's here. There's no need for you guys to come back at the next meeting. You've already been interviewed. No need to come back. You're welcome to. We love you all, but you don't have to. Okay? So there's a motion on the floor to move this to our next meeting. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. And then North End Industrial Park Advisory Subcommittee appointment of Planning Board, recommended member Stuart Hardy, 51 Summerfield Lane, request appointment for a term. And I just suggest that when we get to that, before 1/24. And again, like we did with Trish, Stu is being preferred by by the planning board for the one slot that we have for that committee. So he didn't realize what we normally require, so he's not here tonight anyway, but I would suggest that we just do what we did with Trish and move him forward.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we waive our policy and appoint tonight, and in that motion to appoint Stuart Hardy, 51 Summerfield Lane, to the North End Industrial Park Advisory Subcommittee.
With a term ending.
With a term ending 4/1/2023.
Second.
2024.
24.
Second.
We have- No, this one's 4-1. This one's 4-1. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? This is for waiving the policy
And to
and
appoint.
to appoint. You did it all in one. Hearing none. All those in favor? Okay. And then we have, Dean, you're here, so why don't you come on up, since you're here. This also is, we had two positions from the Economic Development Commission for this board. Dean, you don't have to be long, but why do you think you'll be good for this board? And you are one of the EDC's suggested members.
Well, I'm hoping that there will be some relevant history and work history and experience that will be useful for at least the business park and perhaps the North End development, which I live in. And
Can you pull the mic a little closer?
yeah,
Thanks.
you only swore me in about 4 months ago,
Right.
so you heard my Life and Times of Dean Holt version there already. But my experience has been in many different facets of the real estate business. On the corporate side of the world, VP position, running departments for non-real estate companies such as Elmax and Shaw's Supermarkets, presence. All are doing projects from Vermont, Maine, down to New York and in between. So point is that a substantial part of that, those jobs on the private side as well as on the corporate public side involved permitting the projects and negotiating site control and assemblage of parcels and all the different aspects of things that the town sees for this town. And so it's all very familiar to me. I've negotiated the tenant side of these discussions and as well as the developer side, opposite sides of the table. I feel like I can anticipate a lot of the issues that go along with some of these things, perhaps help in that regard on the town's behalf. So without overstating it or boring you with the story, I mean, I think that my collective experience in extending hundreds, literally hundreds of meetings with zoning boards, planning boards, town councils, conservation commissions, DOT, and all the different parties that get involved with these things, and having managed all the consultants that constitute the team on behalf of either the tenant or the developer to make sure you get to the finish line on these things. I feel like I know a little about a lot. Sometimes it's an inch deep and mile wide, and sometimes it's quite deep. So, but anyway, that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Dean? Again, I suggest a motion is in order to waive our policy and to appoint Dean Holt of 333 Village Road and Renee Jones of 161 Highland Road as the Economic Development Commission's 2 members on the North End and Industrial Business Park Advisory Subcommittee for terms ending 4/1/24.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, welcome.
And our last set of appointments for the evening. So there's one new one on here. Is that accurate? Is that the bold?
James Hughes.
Right,
Yeah.
that's the last.
Okay. All right. So we've interviewed all but one person here. Is James Hughes here? Come on up, James. Hi, James. If you can just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you think you would be a good addition to the Public Safety Complex Committee.
Sure, my name's James Hughes, I'm at 147 Budway. I think I'd be a good pick. First, I think that project's important to the town. I think giving a facility to our first responders will only benefit the town in positive ways. I think being an architect for 20-plus years, I can bring quite a bit to that table. Work on these projects quite a bit, doing all kinds of commercial projects, knowing kind of how it all works. And I think the importance of this project, it should go right and go in a direction that I think it should be good for the town. So I was thinking I would be a good candidate, having all that experience that I would bring to the table.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Hughes? Yes, Deb?
So I see you've done commercial design.
Yes.
Have you done any work on public safety complexes specifically?
Yes, I'm working on a police station right now, actually.
Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, would you mind coming forward?
Thank you.
So this is one where we are at a decision point.
Yes, sir.
So we have, wonderfully, we have 8 members of the public who expressed interest in this committee. And I say wonderfully because we all know how challenging it can be at times to get folks to join any of our boards, commissions, and special committees. So I thank every single person who put their name forward for us to consider. And I'm going to ask Chief, and I know Councilor Edwards, the 5th, met with the chief as the town council member on this committee to discuss suggestions, recommendations.
Yes, sir. I know Mr. Hughes's name is in bold. Has he been interviewed yet?
He was just interviewed. You were talking to Trish.
I apologize. So again, and I know I've spoken with Councilor Edwards, and these are the tough decisions because I think every single one of these individuals is clearly qualified.
And can I interrupt you for
Yes,
a
sir.
second? Those who do not get appointed does not mean you can't work with the committee. You know, go to the meetings, give input, and the like. You don't get a vote, but the more the merrier.
Or apply for something else.
Or apply for something else, but, I'm sorry.
No, and the question that I had, I guess this would be also directed to the solicitor, knowing that we would do the quorum rules apply to the Public Safety Committee? And if so, would it be prudent to appoint alternates if some of these members cannot appear?
We did not put in the
include that in the
resolution
ordinance,
alternates. We could amend the
The
resolution at a later date
Okay?
to allow for alternates, but we could not do alternates tonight.
Okay. I mean, I just think with the number of people, I know it's an 11-person board with a mixture of municipal department heads and citizens. I'm kind of an inclusive guy. I think the more the merrier. I'd hate to say no to any one of these individuals. So if we could include everyone and act the ones that would be willing to act as alternates, so this way we can have a more consistent quorum.
So when you say include everyone, vote for everyone to be on the committee?
So I would say a vote for the 5 per the,
Oh, okay.
the resolution.
Yep.
And then the other 3 could act as alternates.
Provided we bring that back before us.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So who's your top 5?
I have them highlighted if you want.
Yes, sir.
So.
And why?
So, in discussing with the chief, I think there's a lot of good, construction-related individuals here, as we just heard from Mr. Hughes. So, knowing that and what goes into, building public sector buildings, the very difficult decision to narrow it down was to James Hughes, David Moreira Jr., David Turquetta, Robert Parent, and then Timothy Ozer. The latter being because he is a police officer with experience in a much better building than we have at Tiverton.
And so my one question is a lot of construction, like Mr. Myers had a lot of good IT background. Was there a reason we excluded him at all?
Just picking from the top of the pile, that's all.
Again, like I've stated before, Mr. Myers, and I was here for his interview as well, and he does have an IT background. Clearly, his expertise could be useful to the committee.
Same with, even with Susan Oliveira, with the background in, Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think, and no disrespect to Mr. Sodoma, I know, we all know Bob, and I have a great relationship with Bob. Bob has served on many committees, and he does a great job doing it. But again, with no disrespect to Mr. Sodoma, if I had to say to pass one, it would be Mr. Sodoma.
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion. Whoever makes the motion, remember to move the date to 12/31/23.
My only discussion is, when I went through and did my little tick marks, I picked all the guys you did, guys and gals.
No, that's all, guys.
Okay, all guys. I do think that Mr. Myers is a very good candidate, and there is going to be a lot of IT involved in this building.
I hope so.
He would have been one of my choices, but I'll defer to whatever the group wants to do.
So I will entertain a motion. We do not have to waive because we've had this before us 3 meetings now, I think.
Do you want the full slate?
Yeah, unless somebody objects to doing all at once.
No.
Seeing none.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to appoint James Hughes, 147 Budway, David Moreira Jr., 152 Michaels Lane, David Turquetta, 65 Knotty Pine Road, Robert S. Parent Sr., 111 Harbor Ridge Lane, and Timothy Ozer, 23 Mary Lane, to the Public Safety Committee with a term ending 12/31/2023.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed? Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
So, again, can we make sure on our next agenda planning meeting, we talk about amending that resolution? We can talk about if we need to do it for the other one, to the north end as well, to look at alternates.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just to add, I think that, hopefully, again, the 3 that weren't appointed will still come to the meetings and add their input, because I think everyone on that list had something valuable to add.
Agreed, agreed. So now we are moving on to public hearings. The first one is Harekrishna Incorporated, doing business as Pop's Pizza, 777 Casino Boulevard. They're requesting approval of a Class BV liquor license, subject to meeting all legal requirements. Hello again. How are you?
Good. How about you?
Good. So you're in the casino,
Yes.
and you already have a liquor license, correct? No, you
We are
don't
applying
currently?
for a new one, yeah.
This is a new one, okay. All right, you want to,
Just we are gonna sell the beer, but have to apply for liquor, right?
Can you pull a mic over?
yeah, so you have beer now, you want to sell
No, I'm
liquor?
saying we just gonna sell the beer, but we have to apply for a liquor.
Oh, I got it.
Mr. President, they were at the last council meeting for a victualling license.
Yes.
So now they're
Yes, I
following up
remember
with
that,
the.
yeah. Oh, that's right, because you just transferred the ownership.
Yeah.
Got it. I'm going to open up the public hearing, then I'll open it up to questions from us, if that's okay. So I'm going to open up the public hearing on Harekrishna Inc. doing business as Pop's Pizza for their liquor license at the casino. Anybody from the public wish to speak? Anybody from the public wish to speak? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. And does anybody have any questions? Okay.
I have a question for Joan. How many liquor licenses or alcohol licenses do we currently have?
It's below the maximum.
It's below the maximum?
Yeah.
Okay. We changed it to like, what, 21, 23, 24?
It was increased to 30, and we're in the low 20s right now.
Okay. Well, that takes care of that question.
Any other discussion? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the Class BV liquor license to Harekrishna Incorporated, DBA Pop's Pizza at the casino, subject to meeting all legal requirements.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? None opposed? Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good luck.
Now we're moving on to the approval, and I want to get this one in front of me. Okay, where is that?
Right after this.
There it is. It's too thin. So, this is a public hearing on the proposed amendments to the Tiverton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2, Administration, Article 5, Finance, to add sections 291, restricted appropriations accounts, and 295, restricted revenue accounts, which proposes to create various restricted appropriation and revenue accounts related to the budgetary process. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, and I'll look to the solicitor and/or the town administrator to correct me with anything or add anything I miss. So we already have, we're adding this whole section, correct? Okay, so yes. So 291 are generally items that are always in the budget, resolutions that are always in the budget every year that are pretty much necessary to be able to effectuate business in town. So rather than do those every year with the new budget process, we're proposing that these be placed into ordinance. Certainly ordinances can be changed, but we don't have to redo it every year. So we would be adding an appropriations account, a restricted appropriations account for reevaluation, elections, paving, drainage, curbing, and sidewalks, and then sand, salt, and gravel. These are all items that we know are coming forward at some point in time, some annually, some every 3 years for reevaluation, and being able to take a little bit each year to set aside to use this helps us instead of, what's reevaluation, about 15,000? No more? 50,000. 50,000. So instead of adding 50,000 every 3 years to the budget, it allows us to put money in there. And then the elections account, similar, we have elections every year, but depending on what year it is, we have more or fewer, and allows us to do that. And I think everybody understands why paving, drainage, curbing, sidewalks, and then sand, salt, and gravel can fluctuate dramatically every year. We were lucky this year. We had a very mild winter, so we didn't have to use a lot for the latter category. And then 295, the restricted revenue accounts. Again, we generally have on the docket 25%, setting aside 25% of the net proceeds generated from the sale of any parcel of land in the industrial park to be restricted to be used for the purposes of infrastructure improvement in the industrial park. So that would just sustain that over time. Land conveyance transfer tax, again, this is consistent, although the percentages fluctuated over time. This is the same percentage that we have in the current budget that's proposed and that we had last year. So 25% of all revenues from real estate conveyance taxes would be set aside in a restricted reserve account to be used for open space through the Open Space Commission, and both purchasing, maintenance, of public parks, recreational equipment, et cetera. So those are the items before us. I will open it to the public. Anyone from the public, open the public hearing. Anyone from the public who wishes to speak to the proposed ordinance on the restricted receipts and restricted revenue accounts, restricted appropriations and restricted revenue accounts. Anyone from the public who wishes to speak? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Any discussion from the council members?
Mr. Chair, just a couple quick questions here. On section 291 with the restricted appropriations account, this is more for the lawyer. With sand, salt, and gravel, this ordinance is not going to prevent us from moving money in between. This is only going to restrict it at the end of the fiscal year, correct? Meaning, if, let's say, it's another light winter, we budgeted $150,000, but now we need to pull $25,000 for normal operations to offset DPW overtime or something. Would we still be able to hit those accounts, or is this going to lock those dollars up once the budget is approved?
I don't know.
So,
State the question again?
So basically, if we go through the budget and let's say we apportion 150 grand to sand, salt, and gravel, do we have access to be able to move some of those funds during the year? Or is once the budget's approved, there's 150 grand in there for sand, salt, and gravel, that's it, we can't touch it. And if we don't use it, obviously it carries over, but we wouldn't be able to, say, grab $10,000 out of it to help balance out some other accounts as we get closer to the end of the year.
So, my memory's correct, the way it used to be done was you were restricted from taking any monies from these
Right,
accounts.
that's, yeah.
Doesn't say that here. I don't know. It appears that the way this is written, it's only at the end of the year, so it would give the council latitude to do any kind of transferring before the end of the year. But I think the intent was to try to emulate what was done prior, and unfortunately, I wasn't here when you guys did this.
that's right, you were away.
But we could amend it
Yes.
to emulate exactly what the resolutions used to be.
And that would be, that's why I bring the sand, salt, and gravel piece to light, because, while that might make sense for during the year budget, we don't want anybody touching the reval or the elections account for sure, because we need to accumulate those dollars. So if this ordinance doesn't do that, then we might need to look at some language that would ensure that that can't happen.
Well, all those used to have, not to touch them and only to move the money at the end of the year. So the intent was to never transfer out of them. So I think you could modify that by adding that language in now. But that's,
I think part of our plan or idea here was to, how do I put this? Get rid of the highs and lows. So let's just say for this fiscal year, we obligated $100,000 to sand, salt, and gravel.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very good year. We only use 50. At the end of the year, that could carry over into the same account, all of it.
To a
But
restricted
it would
account.
alleviate us having to put so much into it the following.
So-
So what John is saying is exactly the same thing.
Yes.
But right now,
Oh,
it
I see.
doesn't.
My concern is not this council.
You don't want to take it.
My concern is there could be future councils that would look at this ordinance language and say, oh, well, we got to go buy, 6 new police cars. We can strip it out of the reval account.
Right.
So we currently treat the reevaluation account and the elections account and paving and drainage exactly that way, so why wouldn't this be the same?
because it doesn't.
It's the
state.
language. It's the language. Any
Language
remaining
missing.
appropriations.
Under the resolutions prior, there used to be that those monies, those accounts were for their intended purpose only.
So you want them to remain sacrosanct the
Well,
entire year?
I think that's what John's trying to.
Correct.
Let me see if I have those resolutions with me.
You think it should stay restricted?
Yes.
They're actually in the budget ordinance.
They are in the ordinance, okay. Yeah, because we were trying to mirror what was in the ordinance.
This thing.
Because we could have a really light snow year this year and have
Where in
a
the,
mega storm next year and
Correct.
need 3 times that.
Reval is in 3, elections account is in 4, The drainage, paving and drainage is in
Okay,
5.
Here we go. So, let's just look at 3. Resolve that if the town council shall appropriate a sum for municipal operations and capital expenses that includes an amount to fund the reevaluation account, said amount shall be placed in the restricted reevaluation reserve account to be used solely for the purpose of funding property reevaluation. So, I don't know if we want to do this on the fly, or if we wish to have it come back in an amended version at the next meeting.
I think for,
Nervous about on the fly.
I do too.
yeah, I think for a point of clarity, we should probably let the lawyer adjust that.
So, Todd, can you,
So it'd be similar to number 2 is what you're looking for on the budget ordinance,
Right.
right? Where
Yeah,
under
no,
municipal
two,
tax
resol-
accounts
yeah.
restricted for their
Yes.
intended purpose, and no transfers are authorized out of those accounts. Then you reserve what's ever left at the end of the year, so that you kind of, deal with the sloping of
Yes.
whatever the expenditure rates are.
right, yes. So, Todd, if you could work on language that would address that, and I'm just not sure if we have to do the same thing on the revenue side.
I do have one point on the revenue side.
Yep, go ahead, Tom.
So as we went through the budget process this year, Councilor Edwards was very keen to increase the percentage of the land conveyance tax that was set aside. And I think that the general consensus from the council is that we would like to do that. Do we want to make it basically a floor of 25%? With the ability to increase that number if we have the opportunity to do so, rather than revisit the ordinance, go through, have to post and advertise and do all that stuff. Or maybe make it a range.
What would be the preference? Because Todd has to go back and fix this anyway, so.
I don't know, if we have a range, then do we have to decide that every year?
Well, I think with the range, if we're saying that it's restricted, then how do we figure out what the range is for every year?
Or what the amount is.
What the amount is for every year, so.
We know which percentage to
We're
collect.
better
Right.
with a hard number, I think.
Yeah.
Even if you do a minimum, it's, well, no, if we can do a minimum, we can still go above the minimum. If it, right, if it's written as a minimum of 25%, we can still go above the minimum. It's just hard to do it within a range, like 25 to 35%. Actually, you could, no. You could. Yeah, you could.
I just think that, given the fact that we as a council all would like to see more dollars set aside to purchase open space and
playgrounds.
and all the stuff that we want to do. I mean, this year was a very tight year from the budget perspective, so we kept it at 25%. But, if in the future, subsequent councils want to increase that number, I think it's better, rather than having to spend all the money we spend in order to advertise and open up the ordinance and make those changes, it'd be better to have it at, a 25% floor, and then language around whatever the council ultimately decides in the budget is restricted.
So could you just change that by saying a minimum of 25%?
Yeah, that's an easier one.
And then we vote on that each budget cycle?
No, that would be.
No, as long as you
that would
keep it
be-
at the minimum, you do, otherwise you have to vote for anything above the 25%.
So the mechanism with that would be like at the end of the year, decide if we wanted to kick some more in.
I think it would be in the budget.
It'd be part of the budget cycle, right, the budget process?
It would be a recommendation during the budget
That's
cycle
right.
to raise that revenue amount to be offset.
Oh, okay.
I mean, God willing, lightning strikes, and all of a sudden the industrial park is completely occupied, and we have 85 new businesses in town, and we're flush with cash. Like, that would be the opportunity, to, again, it's a hope, but I mean, if the goal is to purchase more open space, I think we need to have a mechanism where we can do so and increase that number.
So Todd's going to work on language for the whole document?
Is it the minimum for both the industrial park and the land conveyance?
Well, and actually, I'll bring up a good point on the industrial park. Lightning strikes, and tomorrow the industrial park's sold. There's no reason for us to have this as an ordinance anymore. So maybe some language around this will expire. This ordinance becomes a moot point once the entirety of the industrial park has been sold.
And maybe been sold and all necessary improvements have been made, because it
Yeah.
might take a couple of years to do everything.
Well, if somebody strokes us a check for $10 million, thinking that we're going to put 2.5 into the infrastructure.
Right.
We want to make sure we do that.
I think if we sell the whole thing, we're gonna wash our hands of it, and we're not gonna wanna make any more improvements.
Right, once we do sell every single parcel. However we do it, we do it. So I will,
So this thing needs work.
so I will keep the public hearing open. So we're gonna keep the public hearing open until our next meeting for modifications to be brought back to us by the solicitor.
And one more final point.
Yep.
Luckily, you and I were on the same page with put them in the budget resolutions in the event that this didn't pass tonight, so.
Yes. Yeah, so we will get onto that, and that will address it for this coming year.
So this is next meeting then, right?
So, yeah, what's that?
You were doing the motion to continue, correct?
Motion to continue the public hearing by
Counselor Edwards?
Counselor Edwards and Counselor Edwards. Motion, second by Jay.
All in favor?
Wait. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Approval of proposed amendments to the Tiverton Code of Ordinances, taxation, property tax exemptions to amend the existing ordinance, Chapter 74, Sections 48, 60, 61, 62, 63, 65, and 66, which proposes to increase the property tax credits for annual income, military veterans and widows/widowers of veterans, disabled veterans, specially adopted housing, Gold Star parents, and prisoners of war. Would you like to explain this, and then we'll open the public hearing?
Good evening. This is a request for the town council to at least consider and review the personal exemptions that we have here in the town. Approximately 2 months ago, I came before the council to give you the idea of adjusting the exemptions to whatever percent, if any, that you feel would be necessary or appropriate. I did suggest a 10%. Taking a look at how we rank with other cities and towns, I thought a 10% adjustment would be fair across the board. When I take a look at those, like I mentioned, I believe at the initial meeting, it would be roughly a effect on the tax rate by 1 penny if we adjusted the exemptions. I know later on you're going to be discussing the possible, what the projected tax rate's going to be. That's not going to affect that at all, only for the fact that we estimated that tax rate. We're actually going to be a little bit less than that. So this is not going to affect what you have as a projected tax rate. And also one other thing to consider is since we no longer tax motor vehicles, we dropped a lot of veterans exemptions from those motor vehicles. So making this adjustment, that 10% gap, unfortunately, a lot of those veterans didn't own property, so they are going to lose that exemption. But because we did drop off the motor vehicle exemption for the veterans, and we're making this adjustment, it's almost a wash between what we kind of dropped off the books to this point here. But just speaking of the veterans, we have currently on the books 879 accounts that have exemptions to them. 80% of those are for the veterans.
Oh, okay, 80%.
All right. So the majority of this change would affect the veterans. And when we take a look at the dollar amount that we have been providing, those numbers have not really been adjusted for at least 10 years.
Do you know offhand what 140 and 170%, 200% of the federal poverty guidelines for our area are?
I do. I think I brought it with me. So the 140% is for, I'm going to use a single household.
Family of four.
Well, the exemptions for the most part, the low income, are generally for the elderly, so it's usually down to four. So I'm going to use it for a two household.
2 households.
140% is 27,608. 170% is $33,524, and 200% is $39,440.
So these are clearly not individuals raking in the money,
Correct.
That's Social Security.
unfortunately. So just so folks are, anything else, Dave? I just want to go through the numbers for the public. So we're looking in this ordinance before us, proposal before us is for those with a federal poverty level of 140% or less, moving the tax credit from $1,000 a year to $1,100. For those who have a poverty level range from 140% up to 170%, moving it from $700 to $770. For those with an annual adjusted gross income greater than 170% and up to 200%, that would move from $500 to $550. And again, these are for persons over 65 years of age. Then moving on to veterans, we would move it from $200 to $220. For a surviving spouse of a veteran, again, $200 to $220. For disabled veterans, $400 to $440. Especially adopted housing, which is housing for those who are disabled through their service with the as a veteran or their spouse, I believe is what it is. $200 to $220. Gold Star parents, where their son or daughter lost their lives in the armed forces in service to our country, $120 to $132. And for former prisoners of war, $600 to $660. I'm going to open the public hearing. Anyone from the public wish to speak to this proposed change to the ordinance on property tax exemptions? Jamie, please come up.
Jamie French. I live at 48 Craig Avenue. I hadn't planned on speaking about this, but here's one of my concerns, that we in Tiverton don't give large discounts for low income or disabled or veterans. They're very minimal discounts. And we don't go by income, we go by income and assets, which is unlike any other community around here. And that means that many people who are on incomes that don't escalate, but on fixed incomes, can get in a bind, because if their house is considered worth more than poverty level, then you don't qualify for the discount, but you don't have the income coming in. And so many of our elderly in the past, I know, have had to move out of their homes for this reason, because the asset is considered as important as the income coming in. And that's not always the case. Someone can be living in their home for 30 years, and their home may have gone up in value even though they haven't done anything to it, but their income hasn't gone up. And to lose that ability to pay their taxes and have to move away from Tiverton for that reason, I think it's just a horrible thing. It makes Tiverton to be a place with no heart. Barrington has fixed incomes, taxation for elderly and people on fixed incomes, and that would be something that would be very helpful. But as a community, I think we have to show more heart in helping people with their taxation, because I just don't think it's right to make people move away.
Ms. French, if I may, assets are not considered.
What?
Assets are not considered part of the elderly low income. It's just their income. So they could have a $200,000 house or a $2 million house. That's not considered.
Oh, are you sure?
Oh, he's
Pretty
chief
sure.
assessor.
I sure hope he's sure.
Been doing it for 17 years. Yep, pretty sure.
Because when I had come into, because the state of Rhode Island considers me low income, and it was suggested that I come in to get the tax credit, but I was told that my house was, I wouldn't qualify because of my car and my house.
So, I'm going to ask you, when you say you were told,
Yeah.
did somebody like Dave tell you that, or somebody like social media tell you that? Okay.
I bet you if you came in tomorrow and applied, you would not count your house.
Correct.
Are you going to put my taxes up instead? I mean, you can't argue with the tax man, right?
Yeah.
It's someone that you don't want to enter into a debate with.
The elderly low-income exemptions never considered the asset. There was originally a discussion of that years ago, but it was never factored in.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do we follow the same process, Dave, as every other community around us?
Other communities may actually consider assets.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public wish to speak to this proposed ordinance change? Anyone else from the public? Thank you, Jamie. I'm going to close the public hearing. Any member of the council wish to speak? Jay, and then Deb, and then John.
Dave, just for a clarification for the public and for myself, can these exemptions be piggybacked? In other words,
There is one veteran exemption.
Disabled, Gold Star, and
Correct.
they add up.
Correct. If you qualify for each one, you can piggyback.
I would not want to be a person who qualifies for each one. I'm sorry.
Qualify for one.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I really appreciate those who have served and think any qualification we can give them is important. I just would not want to be that person who qualifies for all of these. Deb?
So our tax credits had not changed in over 10 years, you had said.
At least 10 years.
So how do we compare with these new numbers to area towns?
All right. I had provided you a handout at the original meeting. We're either 50% better than the communities or a little bit more so. So we're not on the low end. We are fairly generous already with the exemption. So with this adjustment, we're definitely on the higher end. On most of them, there is one, I believe, it was the prisoner of war. That exemption, some communities are tremendously generous with that, but deservedly so. Our exemption currently is $600 for that. Many communities are less than that, but Barrington, for instance, offers a $5,000 credit. Portsmouth offers a $1,200 credit, and Cranston offers $914. So we're at $600. There are 3 or 4 communities that don't offer an exemption at all, and the lowest that's on the books is West Warwick, where it's only $54.
Do you know how many qualify for that?
Here in town?
And not that that number wouldn't change at times, but
45.
45. John, you had something?
Yeah, so my question to the assessor was, in lieu of, hard coding these dollars, have we, are any other communities doing something like a percentage of your property valuation is tax-free, like a homestead exemption?
No. So on these type of exemptions, most communities, and that's what Tiverton was once upon a time, is that you took $1 off the value of your property. I'm not sure if it was really ever loosely based on a percentage, but there was $1 of the value. We went to the General Assembly several years ago and changed it to a credit. We also eliminated the need to go to the General Assembly for their approval. We can do it locally.
So this is all we can do under our current authorization?
We
For
can
the
do
General
anything you
Assembly.
want, actually. We don't need any General Assembly
Oh,
approval
okay. I thought you
whatsoever.
just said we-
So the dollar amount, the town council can amend to whatever you see fit.
No, that's not my question. Do more like what John was suggesting, that we went to the assembly to get rid of that, to do this.
Correct.
So if we wanted to go back to that, we'd have to go back to the assembly to get permission to do that.
If you wanted to do it based on a percentage, yes.
Okay. Other questions? So before I entertain a motion, I am hearing what you said about POWs. And yeah, I can't weigh these individuals. And it's hard to weigh what they've done. And given, I'm wondering if we want to increase that amount to something a little closer to some of our neighboring communities to, I'm going to suggest 1,000, which would be about $22,000 a year with the current numbers.
Where might that put us next?
That
If it went to
additional-
1,000,
Yeah, it would be an additional 22,000 with the current numbers that you just gave. Rough, I based it on 50. so
Yeah.
It's easier math for me.
Oh, doing the math for 45, okay.
No, I did the math for 50.
easier math is always appreciated. Prisoners of war, we would be third from the top. So Barrington's 5,100, Portsmouth 12, Cranston's 9, so we would be third.
So in terms of effect on our tax rate? Any?
Oh, still, because of the number, it's still less than a penny on the dollar rate, on the tax rate.
Is that a motion?
I have a quick question on this, just so I know I'm looking at the right thing. We're talking about the relevant state laws, Title 44, Chapter 3, Section 4, right? Veterans exemptions?
I believe so.
All right, so and assuming this is correct, it looks like the law itself in multiple of these categories stipulates $1,000 with the exception of, and then it rattles off a bunch of towns.
There's a lot of exceptions, yes.
So, given that we're below what the state provides, why wouldn't we just?
No, we're not below what the state provides. That dollar amount off their assessment. A lot of that is dollar amounts off assessed value.
So you have to file the tax rate to change the assessed value.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, there's many communities that have that $1,000, and then it's just based on their tax rate. So some communities are giving $20 to a veteran.
I see.
And a little contest, $20.
Right. Yeah, John, most of those that's outlined in the state statute is a dollar amount off the value. So that $1,000, like I said, is based on a tax rate. So it's a very low exemption.
So is that how Barrington does?
Now, I'm not sure exactly about Barrington, but, that's why you see a lot of exceptions to that. Is
Yeah, so-
that they increase either the value or, not that we were trendsetters, but we went to a tax credit.
Gotcha. Yeah, so Barrington is an exemption on the property, not a dollar amount on a number of these.
Anything else, John?
No.
So I'll make a motion to amend section 7466 as it stands before us to increase that to $1,000 instead of the $660 that's proposed.
I will second.
Any discussion on that amendment? All those in favor? Okay, do I have a motion to move the property tax exemption ordinance changes that are before us with that as amended?
So moved.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you, Dave.
Thank you all.
Now we are moving on to Police Chief Jones, discussion and possible vote on the appointment of Community Service Officer Zachary Furtado. Ah, that's the young man dressed nicely in the back, who had to finish his finals, I believe.
Yes, sir.
How'd you do?
Have a seat right there, Zach.
Good. Zach, welcome. Do you go by Zach or Zachary? What's your
Zach's
preference?
good, sir.
Zach, okay.
Yes, sir.
So welcome. The chief speaks highly of you and your colleagues. If you, I'll let you speak and then,
I'll let Mr. Furtado introduce himself and explain himself to the council.
So I'm Zach Furtado. I'm from Coventry, Rhode Island. I attend Shenandoah University, where I study criminal justice and sociology. I was lucky enough to hear about this job from my dad, who has a good relationship with Chief Jones, and I thought it was a great opportunity for me to help the police department and gain experience for I want to be in law enforcement when I'm older, once I graduate from college.
right, so what year are you?
I'm going to be a senior.
Senior, okay.
Yes, sir.
Questions for Zach? How's your bicycle legs?
Pretty good.
You have them on bicycles, don't you? Sometimes?
It's more like good shoe leather.
Good
for
shoe
them.
leather, okay.
Yes.
Okay, got a couple good pair of shoes.
Yes, sir.
And
Good.
he's a senior.
Coventry's a good
chief.
area. used
I
to live
know.
down
We've
that
already
way.
spoken to
Alright.
that. His father is in the audience as well, who's a retired North Providence police captain, who I've known very well for a long time. And I've already had a conversation with his father, and I've had a conversation with Zach about we are hiring. So I am don't want to speak for him, but graduate as soon as humanly possible.
And Shenandoah is where in Virginia?
It's in the northern part in a city called Winchester.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
beautiful area.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, I have a comment. So I interacted with the other 4 community service officers that we appointed just before Tiverton celebrates. And I can tell you that I have never been around 4 more polite individuals in a long time of that age group. And if you're anything like they are, my goodness.
I can
They were
assure you
great.
he is, sir. He is.
And I'm glad you qualified that of that age group because, I thought you were speaking unkindly about me.
Not in public. No, really, they were really great.
Thank you, sir.
Anything else?
Just one question for the chief. So given that Zach here has the mustache, will the rest of the department be emulating?
Mustaches are allowed under policy to a certain point, but we'll definitely, I have no doubt that CSO Furtado will be adhering to the rules and regulations of the police department.
Be all over it.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Zachary Furtado to the position of Community Service Officer, as recommended by the chief.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Congratulations, welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Start tomorrow morning, right?
Thank you.
Evening, Dennis. So we're going to move on to Fire Chief Bailey. Your turn. Approval and vote of budget transfers for FY23. I'm not going to read the account numbers. $7,000 from firefighter training to station maintenance, $9,000 from firefighter training to medical supplies, and $6,000 from holiday pay to apparatus maintenance. Anything you want to tell us more about those?
Just looking to move money to pay some bills until the next fiscal year.
Okay, any questions for the chief? Jay?
You've heard me say this before. I get real nervous when I see training being rated. So what training is not being done?
So that account is predominantly to send recruits to the Rhode Island Fire Academy. We're not going to send anybody there's no openings and we have nobody to send between now and July 1st. The last 3 candidates we hired all had their credentials and did not require going to the Rhode Island Fire Academy. So, and it was also budgeted with the hope to get the SAFER grant, which we didn't get. It's about it's going to go up, but it was about $3,700 a year to send somebody to the academy, not a year, but per recruit. So we have money in that account that can be used to fix apparatus, station maintenance, et cetera.
So this wasn't in-house training? This
No,
was-
it's not affecting in-house training.
Okay.
And by-
Well, I can buy that.
By hiring credentialed candidates, you saved us money.
Exactly. Hoping to hire a couple more.
We got to steal from other people this
But
time.
we're trying to do that.
That doesn't happen too often.
Did you have something?
No, Mr. Chair, just want to make a motion
Go
to
ahead.
approve the budget transfers as requested by Chief Bailey.
Second. Motion and second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you very much.
Chief. Rick, if you want to join us, approval and vote of budget transfers for FY23. Again, I'm just going to read the accounts. $17,000 from DPW workers to equipment repair and MinRep. I'm not sure. Something repair.
Minor repairs.
Minor repairs, thank you. $35,000 from overtime to equipment repair, minor repairs, $2,000 from DPW workers to shop equipment, $70 from DPW workers to mobile communications, $4,000 from DPW workers to highway signs, $400 from DPW workers to maintenance tool equipment replacement, $4,000 from DPW workers to field rehab, $3,000 from DPW workers to recreation area porta-johns, very important. Anything you want to enlighten us on, Director?
Not particularly, but if there's any questions, certainly happy to answer them.
Any questions, Jay?
Okay, back in February, we transferred $50,000 to maintenance, equipment repair. We're doing it again. That's a lot of equipment repair.
Yes, it is.
You want to talk about what it was?
Sure.
Well, I just want to make sure that we properly budgeted this year.
We think we did. A couple of examples are to repair the brakes on the front end loader was about $20,000. To repair the sweeper was about $20,000. And tonight we're going back again to ask for permission to spend more money on the sweeper. So the equipment, some of it is fairly old and some of it is quite specialized, like the backhoe, the sweeper, the clamshell truck, the front end loader, the dozers, which is separate. So they're expensive items to maintain.
Thank you. Any other questions of Director Rogers?
No, I just a point, I do believe we put in quite a bit of money into the budget for small equipment repairs this year. Because
Yes.
it was a number that people had questioned.
There was an increase there.
Right.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the budget transfers as requested by Director Rogers.
I have a second. Second. Joe, any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, Rick, don't go far. Let me get rid of your budget transfer documents. So next is approve the bid awards for curbside collection of trash and recycling.
You
And
want to sit, Rick.
Nope, well, I think I'm all set.
Rick's got
for
too
now.
much energy. He doesn't sit much, from what I can tell. So, Rick, what is before us?
Okay, the town council, town hall requested that we go out to bid for curbside collection of trash and recycle and various items. So we did, the two bids were received, one from MTG Disposal LLC and one from Boston Carting Services LLC. There is, in your various backup was included in the backup that was sent to everybody last week from the town clerk. If there's any particular questions or if you want further explanation, happy to do so. There is hopefully a chart, well, there is a chart. Hopefully it makes it fairly clear what the different items are and how they compare, to try to make it so you can compare apples to apples.
So can you walk us through this chart, which I believe you talked about this?
I think so.
It says curbside collection recyclables at the top, and it has bids, MTG on one column, Boston Carting on another column?
Yes.
Okay.
So curbside collection and the bid was put out, there was, I think, 12 options on the bid. One of them was, for instance, the fuel adjustment, and there was cots included in the automated. Now, not everybody bid with the same not the same numbers, but they didn't always insert a number. So DPW calculated as closely as possible what the cost would be in a particular year, which is year number 1. For instance, one small example is MTG Disposal did not bid trash and recycling separately. They put a note in there that trash and recycle were grouped under the one heading of trash. Boston Carting Services, they bid separately, and they included a fuel adjustment, whereas MTG, it was included in their bid.
So when we look at manual trash and recyclables,
Yes,
you added in the recyclables for Boston Carting so we could compare apples to apples?
right.
Okay.
And the fuel adjustment was added in, and the two were put together, trash and recycle. So on manual trash and recycle, Boston Carting is 1.45, MTG is 1 million. Yard waste is listed also, and the yard waste is per year. Curbside collection and transportation is per year. When you get to white goods, that's a per day or per pickup. And when you go to bulky waste, same thing, per day. Now, when you get down to automated trash and recyclables, with the bidder, the end owner of the bins, you'll see 2 numbers there, 1 for each bidder. Automated trash and recyclables with the town, the end owner of the bids at the end of the 5-year contract. Something to bear in mind, possibly if you care to, bear it in mind, is manual trash and recyclable is a 3-year contract with an option to renew in multiple or one lump sum or individual years up to another 5 years. Automated, because of the cost of acquiring the equipment and the bins, is a 5-year contract with, again, an option to renew in 1 year or multiple year increments up to another 5 years. On automated trash and recycle with the town, the end owner of the bids, there was no bid by MTG Disposal, there was for Boston Carting.
Rick, on the automated recycling, I imagine that each company has a design that's different, so it's not like if we own the bins at the end of the contract and brought a new company in, that new company might not be able to use those bins anyway, right?
It's my understanding that they're fairly universal.
Okay, okay,
And that,
Pretty standard.
okay.
Rick, I just have a quick question here, just so I'm understanding correctly. So when I see $1 million for manual trash and recyclables versus automated trash and recyclables with bidder to own the bins, it's one or the other, right?
well, there was an option in well, not an option, but it was stated in the contract, not the bidder information, the invitation to bid and the instructions to the bidders, that the town could award a contract starting out with manual and then converting at a mutually agreeable time to automated. And also in the bidder instructions and the notice of invitation to bids, it stated that the town can award multiple bids, one bid, not award some of them. For instance, you could exclude yard waste or white goods, etc. And this was done to give the town options, particularly the town council, so they could decide what they want to do, and a town administrator, etc.
So just back to my question real quick. So if we went automated, and let's say we picked MTG, it's 1.475 million. That's the trash contract. It's not 2.475 million, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. For that first year.
Yep.
Yes.
But you could do 6 months at the million rate to get them prepared to get the bid. I don't have to have them in stock. And then you convert to the 1.475 at that 6-month period where they can roll out and do the automated. We don't think anybody would be ready to do an automated on July 1st.
Yeah, of
That
course.
was my other question, July
Yes.
1, okay.
Rick,
So-
can you repeat something for me?
Sure.
Automated trash and recyclables with bidder, the end owner of the bins?
Yes.
What's the contract on that?
What's the contract?
Well,
Five
the
years.
100,
5
you said
years.
5-year contract with 1-year renewals.
Up to 5 years.
Right.
Same.
Yeah, same, except for 3, manual is 3 plus possible 5. Automatic is 5 plus a possible 5.
So
Oh, manual way up.
Manual is 3 plus a possible 5.
Okay.
if you went automated with the town owning the bids at the end, that would be at the end of Boston Cotting, that would be at the end of 5 years. MTG did not submit a price for the cots or the bins, but they did say that the town would own the bins at the end of 8 years, which means the town would have to renew another 3 years. And if you want to consider starting with manual and then converting to automated, I do have a handout that includes what you see here, but also lists, if you wanted to go after August 1st, say, or September 1st. Boston Cotting has indicated they would be able to start August 1st or possibly September 1st, but they think August 1st.
For the
MT
automatic, did you say?
With automatic.
Yeah, okay.
With
But they
MT,
could start July 1st if we did manual.
yes, they, both companies would find it basically impractical to start July 1st. MTG, that would be worked out with them if it was to be started at manual and then converted to automatic on a particular date. That's mutually agreeable.
I mean, I don't know about others, I'm not ready to convert to automatic at this point in time, so.
So
Probably wouldn't do
down
any
on
better
the,
in budget cycle either.
so down at the bottom left hand, you would see MTG year total if 1 month standard, then convert, then if 2 months standard, then convert. Same thing with Boston Cotting. So it's very clear on the upper section that if you went a whole year, what the cost would be. That's very clear on manual, it's 1 compared to 1.45. Same thing with automated, it's 1.475 versus either 1.34 or 1.36. That's very clear. The bottom left simply gives you an idea if you started at manual and then converted after 1 or 2 months. And then again, if the longer you go on manual, then obviously the price drops for comparing MTG versus Boston Cotting. However, if you then converted to automatic at the end of, say, 1 year, then the price would be a 1.475 in comparison to 1.36. So you just have to bear that in mind, that if you're going to convert now or later, there's a substantial difference between manual and automatic.
Yep.
We have to time it, right?
Yep.
I have a-
And,
So what kind of bins are they talking? The big ones on the wheels?
Yes, and there's an option, again, in the contract, and those were bid at either 64 or 96 gallon. 64 gallon or 96 gallon.
And people get one for trash and one for recycling?
Correct. And
So
they get to choose, which size they want. Now,
Oh, they get
if
to
you go,
choose them.
if you go automated and then convert to still staying with pay-as-you-throw, but getting rid of the bags, then you'd have to have a yearly fee associated with the size cot or bin that you have.
So, Rick, as it relates to the manual collection, that's basically the way we do it today.
Yes.
We pick up trash, we pick up recycling each and every week. If you
Yes.
go to the automated, you pick up trash once a week, and then you would pick up recycling every 2 weeks?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That is correct. That's the way it's bid. That's one of the ways to save money is that the various contractors don't have to have as many crews because they alternate every other week with another community that has automated pickup. For recycle trash, as Chris said, every week.
Okay. Other questions?
So
Deb?
I
Devin or
do.
Jay?
On the yard waste,
Yes,
that's a cost for MTG. That 72,000 is for every week that we do yard waste pickup?
nope, just like we do now, we do about 12 pickups a year. That's 12 pickups a year. And if it takes them 1 day or 5 days to pick it up that week, that's the price.
Remember, it's per week, the 72 grand.
That's for the year. So
Okay.
That's for the year, so-
round figures, it's 6,000.
So you add that to the million,
Right.
right?
If
That's
you-
added on.
Right.
Now, the Boston cotting is 508?
Yes.
Why, that's such a huge difference?
That, I don't know all the reasons for that.
Are they thinking every week they're doing this, or?
It appears that they're simply saying it's gonna take a week at 12, and they have a higher rate. But again, as the backup shows it's hard to get everything on this chart. But as the backup shows, MTG had stipulations that if they were to do yard waste, it would be contingent upon having either bid item 1 or 6, which is either the manual or the automatic. They wouldn't pick it up for that price if that was the only thing that they did.
Can you explain the 12 pickups for yard waste? It's not, do you pick up at every house 12 times a year?
Yeah, we do curbside pickup at all the households that have compostable bags outside on curbside.
12 times a year?
Yes.
We did it once this year.
Right, but
Yes.
normally, when we had the landfill, we were doing about 12 times a year. Probably 4 or 5 in the fall,
Yeah.
and another 3 or so in the spring, something like that.
And it might have been, yes, Mike and Chris, it might have been 11 or something like that, but we factored it in. Is my memory, when I wrote this, it was twice in April, in May, maybe in June, and then once in July, August, and then twice again, September, October, November, that kind of thing. So it equaled 12 curbside pickups.
And is there a maximum number of bags?
Yes. The equivalent of either in bundles or compostable bags that you've seen all these years for 6. So it'd be a total of the equivalent of what would be in 6 compostable bags.
Which is what it had been before we closed the landfill.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, also by that curbside pickup, you are limited to the 3-inch or less in diameter, and I think it might be 3 or 4 feet in length.
Yeah, so I can't knock a tree down and give it to them.
Well, once we have Mike, once we have the permanent recycle center, we expect to take larger, but it would be a fee associated with it if it was more than 6 bags. But if you want to knock down a tree, please do it on a non-town road.
I think all of our trees are gone in my yard practically. Go ahead.
So Rick, the only question I have is, yard waste disposal at resource recovery, 72,000.
Yes.
Yard waste disposal at wherever, local, 72,000.
Yes.
The total ignores transportation to resource recovery. Why?
No, that's up to the bidder. But the bidder has the option of taking it either to Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation or the town recycle center.
Oh, is that all that's saying?
Yeah. And their price was the same.
Well, okay, it still doesn't make sense, but I'll go with it.
So, Rick, any other questions, John?
Yeah, I got a number. So we budgeted $1,080,000 for this upcoming fiscal year, correct?
We budgeted
Yeah. So that budget of $1,080,000, that doesn't comprehend or contemplate what we receive in revenue for pay-as-you-throw.
Correct. That budget was, again, and all of the DPW fiscal year '24 budget was done with a large lack data, because we hadn't closed the landfill. There was lots and lots and lots of unknowns. But that budget request, and again, that data was, that backup data was submitted along with the budget way back in January, or whatever it was. And so that was factored in at the current January to June rate. For instance, what we're paying right now was $76,932. So DPW multiplied it by a 1.1 times 12, and that equaled the 1015, and then we added 65 for fuel adjustment. So you took the current rate, multiplied it by 12 months, added a factor of, because of inflation and CPI, 10%, because again, it was unknown what the bids would come in at for a number, and it adds the fuel adjustment. So the 1.015 plus 65 for fuel equals the 1,080,000.
And so, and I'm reading this correct, that MTG has agreed that they're not going to have any fuel surcharges in the future for the duration of the contract?
Correct.
Okay.
It's basically factored in already.
Okay.
It's like free delivery. It's factored in.
But not the tipping fees. So when I look at this spreadsheet and I see 362,550, let's say we pick MTG at $1 million, we're really going to spend 1.362550.
And again, John, that was done at a time when we didn't have any data except volume, how we used to calculate volume for the Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation annuals informational report that we had to give, and Rhode Island DEM's informational report that we have to do every year. That was based on volume that PAR does of the landfill. So they do a topographical survey, and they subtract last year's, and that comes in. Now you then have to convert it to tons, and there's a lot of unknowns. So you have to pick a number that represents, pounds or tons per cubic yard or cubic foot. And those numbers were coming in around 5,300 or so. It looks like now we might be more like 4,000 tons a year versus 5,300. So you would save money.
Okay.
It's probably because of the landfill cover material that we put on top of it.
Yeah.
And without looking at your budget, you actually asked for 1.6 total, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And that.
So at least it's in the budget. It's just not in the contract.
Right.
Right. That, the 1.6 includes the 1,080,000 for transportation and collection, includes the 362 for tipping, includes the, for trucking, roadside items, town events, unknown factor, which is about a 10% factor, and you add that, that's 166, and that gives you the 1.61 million. And again, the 10% factor was not out of line when you look at the two different bids. One came in at 1 and one came in at 1.454.
So,
You calculated the increase in tipping fees?
go ahead, Counselor.
Yes, as per the backup, the tipping fees were calculated at 58.5, which is what the fiscal year 24 Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation rate will be, obviously starting July 1st. And also, again, starting July 1st, the over cap is 115. So our over cap calculation back in December, January was at 115 because we knew already what the projected costs were going to be.
John, you still have?
Yeah, I still have several questions. Do we know how many households?
We factor it at about 6,700, which is the best information we have from the various sources, basically the tax collector, the tax assessor, the census, et cetera.
Okay, so, and then, Mr. Administrator, just refresh my memory. We're 379 a year in pay-as-you-throw revenue when all's said and done?
About that.
Okay.
Between 350 and 400.
And that number, John, does go up up and down because,
Based on the seasons, yeah, I get it.
well, and not only that, John, but based on, for instance, 2019, 2020, 2021, might be different in 2022 or 2023, so.
I mean, so I guess the only thing I would say is that, as I look at this, I mean, in my opinion, we should be, acting like it's 2023 and doing automated with the bins, and then come up with a sticker solution to offset the revenue on the pay-as-you-throw program. Because from a just purely environmental standpoint, it makes no sense to put plastic bags inside of plastic bags and shove them in the landfill. So I think there's some options here, and I mean, pleasantly surprised with some of these bid numbers, the way they came back.
And John, just to, in case I need clarification, the to-go bagless, to keep the pay-as-you-throw cycle, but not have to actually use a special bag, then you have to go automated. But if you go automated, you don't have to get rid of the bags. You can still use those until you come up with a system to identify the cots and charge a fee.
Yep.
So, for instance, just using Rick's estimate, best guess, so it's 6,700 households. If we charge $10 per month for trash pickup, we'd more than double what we net in pay-as-you-throw, which would more than offset where we're at. And I know there's plenty of people in this town, present company included, that use more than $10 in bags in a month.
You would, if I may, you're gonna wanna factor in, John and everybody else, if I may say so, the size of the cot. For instance, the
Correct.
96 isn't gonna be the same price as a 64.
So we could do 120 and 150, done. We almost triple our revenue on pay-as-you-throw, and we can go automated tomorrow. Well, in 2 months.
Other questions, Sean?
Nope.
Dennis, do you have any questions?
I'm fine.
Anybody else? Rick, did you have something you were wanting to say?
Sure, the automated and standard both have their own set of headaches.
Right.
And both have their set of advantages. There are many, many communities in Rhode Island that do automate it, so it's obviously a viable method. There has been, talk multiple times over the last 10 years at least, that the town has said, let's go automated, and some people object because the cots are somewhat unwieldy for elderly or handicapped. Also, the town does have, on the books, the ordinance says you cannot put out your bins before noon the day before, and they have to be out by 6 a.m. So unlike maybe some other locations, you can't simply leave it curbside. So there's pluses and minuses to both methods. There is less litter, at least in theory, with the lid cots. And it's more uniform. Some people may like the appearance better. Also, you have to have a distinctive emblem or decal so that somebody doesn't buy a cot somewhere else and put it on the line.
John, question?
No, just one more point to piggyback off of what the director's saying. One thing that's not factored into this was the rejected loads on the recycling side. And if we were to go automated for the recycling bins, that should drastically reduce the number of rejected loads because, as the director has previously stated, a lot of our rejected loads are due to like wet cardboard and things without a lid on top of those. I mean,
If I may, John?
Yeah.
Nope. I'm not sure I said that. The moisture is a factor. And we do have something in that says if it's moisture, under this contract, we take care of the first rejected 3 loads that are listed first by Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation on their list of rejection reasons for wet, excessive moisture. But the biggest is plastic bags. And the second biggest is plastic bags. And the third, so the disadvantage to the containerized automated pickup is that they don't see till it's too late that it's contaminated. Also is until you get the system in place, but all these are solvable. but until you get the system in place for the decal or the sticker or some such, they could be putting in regular trash bags in the trash and not using the maroon ones.
Right.
Again, I stress that all these problems are solvable, no matter which method you use, within reason.
So for any motion, Rick, I believe what you need is for us to approve the full bid package based on knowing that at some point in the future, we may decide to move from manual to automated? The full bid package for either one of these two proposals? Or we could do à la carte?
Yes, you could. In fact, I'm not sure you'd want to necessarily factor in yard waste if you feel that the price isn't something the town wants to spend that on now. For instance, yard waste right now, DPW collects that. And it's probably at a slightly lower price than even the 72. The white goods, right now, we have an option that anybody can take it to the recycle center if they wish. And the bulky items is probably something that people would want if it was in the budget, because there's no transfer station now.
Right, but right now, those items on yard, white goods, bulky, are not in your budget.
You probably will have enough leeway, Mike, to do white goods or bulky.
Or bulky or both?
You probably could do both within the stipulations in the contract that state how many items you can pick up, you can collect. In other words, for that one day,
Right.
the contractor will only pick up X amount of items, whatever that is. It might be 30, 40 items.
I can't empty my living room out onto the,
Well, possibly you could if you were the first one, but they cut it off, and then you
collectively,
have to
okay.
go to the next
Okay.
month and the next month. The yard waste, that may not be as economical at this point. So a couple of key features are, manual is 3-year contract, automated is 5. If you go automated, you do have the option of starting with manual and then going into automated.
but you're suggesting we would have to make that choice tonight?
To be able to compare apples to apples, you probably would have to decide that now, because you see the numbers in front of you. It was not a clear-cut decision because Boston carting is less expensive automated, but MTG disposal is less expensive standard pickup.
And we're not ready to do automated right now.
And
The-
and also, Deb, if I may, if you own the cots at the end of 5 years, granted, they have a depreciation. But if you own the cots at the end of 5 years, you spend about $125,000 more with Boston carting, but you own the cots. And the cots are valued at anywhere from, say, $450,000 to $550,000. So that's not a bad return, because your cots are gonna last, or your bins are gonna last more than 5 years. So,
Deb?
Depending on how hard they're thrown.
Well, they wouldn't be if it's.
If it's the automatic,
The arm
yeah,
would put it right back down.
Well,
I don't
they
know.
might get blown around.
I
That's
follow,
what it is.
I follow those trucks on my way into work in another town. I see them bang around, but anyway. Biggest issues for residents right now are the yard waste, the white goods, the bulky waste, that we haven't had pickups for them. I know we did a yard waste, but if they were used to having it 12 times a year and we've only done one, with a maximum of 10 bags, which is more than a typical pickup, but it's still, if they were used to having like twice in a month, and now we're going to that, I think that we need to consider those in the contract, even if we don't do, if we do it DPW, if you guys can man that, and keep it economical, or if we're not doing 12 in a year, if we're doing 8 or, whatever number. But I think it's important, and I think the residents want that.
Yeah.
It's something they really miss. I don't know if you guys are seeing more stuff dumped on the sides. I know you were always doing pickups of large items, but have you seen more since we closed the dump?
We have not seen a drastic increase in roadside throwaways. There's been some, but not drastic. That doesn't mean it won't increase as time goes by, because there is no transfer station for bulky items. White goods, we never picked, I mean, we might have years and years ago, but white goods is always take it to the recycle center or the transfer station back then. But yes, yard waste is a popular item, very popular. When the recycle center is open, we do expect to.
Do we
again,
have any idea on that?
Right now, it's in the permitting phase, Mike, at DEM. So
Still,
we
okay.
hope that we would have a response from them by, say, the end of July.
When did we submit that? Those
That's,
permits?
the actual submittal went in
Quite a while ago.
this month, I think.
No, I think that was,
Today's date.
I think that was the final. I think they've been doing drafts with them.
Oh, yeah,
No.
they've been working on the proposals, right, and they've been talking to DEM, and
Okay.
they've been discussing it, but the actual, I think, application went in
Okay.
this month.
All right. So,
We're hoping within 30 to 60 days tops.
it will open within
We're
30?
hoping.
We're hoping, okay.
What was that, please?
Hoping for 30 to 60 days to
On-
open.
Or
For the
return?
permits.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
yes.
for the permits to come back.
Yeah, opening will be, we'll have to go out for contract.
Yeah, we have to put it out to bid,
Okay.
and then we have to award the bid, and then they have to construct it.
Right, okay, so it's gonna be a little while.
Yeah.
But I think, Deb, maybe, I don't know if I heard you right. If we have a choice of either including in whatever bid we approve, the yard waste, white goods, bulky waste, one or more of those items, or not including them and having DPW pick them up. It's not include them and also have DPW pick them up.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
But can DPW, can you support all of that?
Jamie, we're not taking public comments.
Can the DPW support all of those, the yard waste, the white and the bulky pickups?
Yeah, no, so if they delivered the white goods to the recycle center or to a metals recycler, that wouldn't really be that large an impact on DPW. And if they did bulkies, they could not take it to DPW because we can't have a transfer station. Their two options are either take it to Rhode Island Resource Recovery Corporation or take it to another licensed landfill that is acceptable to Rhode Island Resource, which Rhode Island Resource is happy to have bulky items go somewhere else. So that's not an issue. On the yard waste, they can either take it to Rhode Island Resource, and we pay for that, or if you go over the cap, which is 400, and then or they can take it to the recycle center.
Great,
But
thank you.
but if DPW is picking up, because you picked up the yard waste,
Yes.
can you accommodate more pickups
Well,
if we don't put it in the contract with the trash?
we didn't used to get complaints on to doing the 11 or whatever that we did, because people had an outlet that they could take it to the landfill, and we expect them to be able to take it to the recycle center. So is it work that DPW would have to do? Yes, it is, but we've done it in the past.
There'd still be a cost to us to
Oh, yes,
put that somewhere.
yeah. Not counting tipping or anything like that,
Right.
you're probably looking at, depending on how long it takes you, 50,000, between 40 and 60,000 for DPW to do it.
So about a
But-
$12,000 difference at the
Exactly.
high end.
And neither one includes the tipping.
Okay.
So, just because I didn't see it here in this package, and I can't, for some reason, pull it up in my email, for Boston Karting, what was the fuel adjustment or surcharge? I know MTG just wrapped it in that 1.475.
Right. And so the fuel adjustments, it is added into the number there, and it depends on which item, because, and this is in your package, they had fuel adjustments for trash and recycle, 800 gallons, yard waste was 16, white goods and bulky were 20 gallons, and automated trash was again 800, and automated recycle was 800. And then school was 200. But when you look at the Boston Carting Services and the MTG is included. Boston Carting, I added in based on the, I believe it was like 4.76 or something like that was the USEIA, which is the United States Energy Administration, Information Agency, for the date that we selected for the fuel adjustment. And then I factored in, I think it was $6, and then multiplied by the fuel adjustment gallons that they listed. And that's included in both the manual or the automated. So that includes the fuel adjustment.
So I guess the question I'm driving at here is, let's say, again, hypothetically, automated trash and recyclables with the bidder to own the bins at the end of the contract. MTG is 1.475, period, for 5 years.
Yes.
All right, but Boston Carting Services would be 1.337 and change.
Oh, I have to correct myself. I'm sorry, John, I made a mistake just then in speaking that too quickly. Both automated trash, manual, no matter who you use, the contract, bid documents state you will get a CPI. So you will get an adjustment, you know, each July 1st, whether it's up or down based on the CPI.
Okay, but my question on the fuel piece, right? So if we wanted to hedge our bets, right, and we think that the cost of fuel is going up, MTG is going to eat the cost of fuel for the next 5 years versus Boston Carting, we're going to have to figure it out if prices go through the roof. So
Yes.
if tomorrow war breaks out in the Middle East and all of a sudden, you know, fuel goes from, you know, $4 a gallon for diesel to $10 a gallon, we're going to take it with Boston Carting versus MTG is going to eat that cost.
Yep, but in the interest of fairness, the CPI on MTG would be based on 1.375 the first year, and it would be based on 1.363 for Boston Carting minus the fuel adjustment. And the fuel adjustment was, okay.
And while you're looking for that, Mr. Administrator, does anybody have a copy of the school's budget breakdown that they gave us? Mine's at the house. And the reason for the ask is there's trash and recyclables at the school. MTG's at 3,500. Boston Carting's at 61,000.
I have one in my office. I'd have to go.
I'm just curious what the school budget's for that line item.
I have no idea.
Because it
I don't
might be an
get it.
opportunity to find some dollars right there for the school department.
What's,
It would be, but are we going to change the budget now?
I'm just putting it out there.
I want to move us to a vote soon.
So you have on the fuel adjustments, you have about 12,000 to 24,000 on fuel adjustment for Boston Carting. Again, based on $6 for the, that's per year.
So,
is the schools added into the total?
Optional added.
That's optional?
you
Yeah.
need this tonight, right?
Excuse me?
You need this tonight?
Well, certainly we should do something tonight, but if my real concern is if we're going to go to automated and we're going to start implementing fees, there's an ordinance requirement to do that?
Right. I don't think we're ready for
Okay,
that.
all
I
right.
don't think we're ready for that.
So, I'll entertain a motion from anybody on whether or not we award the bids to MPG or to Boston Carting, and specifically what we are planning to award. And then before you get a second, I want Rick to listen to it and Chris to listen to it and make sure we have everything in it that you need. So I'll offer one of these. That we award the bid to MTG Disposal for manual trash and recyclables white goods, bulky waste. I'm gonna say yard waste. At a cost of I don't have that. Do you have that added up at all?
I don't. Well, while you're doing that, I'll make one comment on yard waste.
Hold off on that, please. I have it at 1,144,000.
What are the items you picked?
Manual trash, yard waste, white goods, and bulky waste. And I'm not saying where because it really doesn't matter for the cost.
Would you say the number again?
I have 1,144,000.
Did you include the school?
Include the school, so that's another 35. So that's 500. That's 1,147,500 for year one.
If I may ask, Mike, so you have 1 million as a base,
Yeah,
then you have 72,000.
yeah. Oh, you know what? I added 72,000 in twice.
Oh, you did?
Yep. Hang on, I did this all wrong.
So the issue is on the white goods and the bulky waste, those are a number of trips. That's not for the
Okay,
year.
okay,
So Rick, how often did you used to empty your containers up there at landfill?
The bulkies?
Well, no, for like white goods. Well, it wasn't in containers, it was in a pile.
The white goods, Jay, we have to pay for any kind of Freon, but the white goods more or less paid for themselves because of the scrap price.
Oh, okay.
107 what? What are you adding together?
I added 1 million,
Yeah,
and then the 72,000,
yeah.
and the 900.
Take the 900 out for a minute, that's why. And the 1,700 because of what Chris just said. So if you don't include bulky and white goods, and you include the schools and the yard waste and the manual, it's 107,500.
500, yes.
And then we'd have to figure out how many times we want to do the other two items a year, right?
Well, you could do that when they bid it though, and that would have to be something that would be mutually agreed. But when they bid it, it was some baseline that was given to them so they could come up with the numbers.
Okay.
And it was once a month for bulky and once a month for white goods.
So then you're talking another 9,000.
So 900 times.
So-
10,800?
On the white goods, if we're breaking even on white goods now, let's say, there really would not be any need to add that in the contract. On the bulky items, while we don't do that today, is there a way to figure out, could we add this as an addendum to the contract, but then charge a fee to make up the cost of this?
Yeah, yes,
So-
you could, and I believe, Chris, as long as it's mutually agreeable, that you could add that pickup later on in
Right.
the year.
So I would add them as addendums to the contract, but figure out a fee structure so we're not burdening everybody with.
So what if we did a motion that said we were gonna award the contract to MTG for manual trash recycling at $1 million for year one with, and all this is, you have the CPI adjustments annually. Yard waste disposal at 72,000. Schools at 3,500. And any additional tipping fees and would have to be added in, correct? Tipping fees and fuel charges, no, tipping fees, yes?
Yeah, but tipping fees are separate, Mike.
We
They're not part-
get billed for
It's not part of the bid, okay. So,
Can I just interject?
and that we authorize the town administrator and the DPW director to come back to us with potential amendments for bulky waste and white goods.
I would add them as addendums to, authorized addendums to the contract, but then we come back with language on how we would make that work.
If you wanted to add it in using the baseline numbers that the director just added, it would be $31,200. That's one trip per month for each one of those items.
Yes.
Probably wouldn't be a bad idea.
If you factored everything that you're saying, if you did the bulkies, the yard waste, the schools, I come up with a total of 1,106,700. And I also come up with what John said, 31,200, if you do white goods and bulky. That just gives you an idea of the total cost. But I understand, I believe what you're saying, Mike, as the motion is $1,072,000. And then Chris and I would come up with addendum to address in the future.
You could add the schools too.
$1,075,500.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, the schools, thank you. And then Chris and I would come up with, at Chris's direction, come up with an addendum or addenda to do whites and bulkies.
We'll do that with legal, too.
Yes, and legal.
You want a not to exceed number in that?
I'm assuming it's a not to exceed, because is there any fuel adjustment on the $1 million?
No, not to exceed on the bulky and the white goods.
Okay, all right, yeah.
Not to exceed 32,000.
30.
I know you said 31 too.
Yeah, okay.
Just round it up.
You may might make it 35,000 just to, if I may, just to make it in case there's any,
In case you got to do two trips in 1 month.
yeah, or something, you know. But we could limit it, as you said, Mike, we could just say no more than 32,000.
Well, I think we put a not to exceed, and it still allows us, with whatever rules we do, to charge. I mean, if you're gonna take my couch, that's great, makes it a hell of a lot easier for me. I should get charged for you to take my couch.
What?
My father-in-law just paid $50. He was gonna pay $150 for an old mattress. Not here,
Yes.
in Dartmouth.
150 for a mattress.
Yeah, well, he said, I'm old. He is, he's 96.
Oh, they had to come and get it.
And to address your point, Mike, and Chris had mentioned earlier, when we wrote the invitation, the bids, and the instructions, we anticipated residents having to pay for that service, whether it's white goods or bulky, but not yard waste.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, if they got excess yard waste, they can find a place to take it themselves.
So, I know you don't have a second.
Well, I was just formulating it, we have to really finalize it, but.
Okay, because I would suggest in whatever motion that if the intent here is to go manual, at least because of the time constraints around the bins, I would only support if we award the bid with the intent within 6 months to go to automated.
I can't do 6 months. I would be happy to say that the administrator and the DPW director come back with us in 6 months with a potential plan to go to automated.
And
Which style of automated? We own the bins, or they own
Well,
the bins?
If you
That's
award,
part of the
if
plan.
you award to MTG, we don't own the bin. Well, we own the bins after 5 years.
At the 8,
8 years.
but the bid's only for 5 years. But you could, that's up to the town to mutually agree to, you could do the automated never, or you could do the automated in 6 months, 18 months. You'd have to
Does
come
that
to
have
it.
to be part of the contract right now?
Not to my knowledge, because it says the town, as mutually agreeable, can institute the automated at some time other than July 1st. But there's price ramifications, that's why I outlined it in the comparison, trying to get apples to apples. So you would see the cost ramifications of starting out with non-automated and going to automated based on who you select.
But how are we gonna deal with the increase in price between manual and automated?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Budgetary.
So the reason why I would suggest 6 months is because it is far too easy for us to get distracted by other things. And next thing you know, it's the end of the 3-year contract and we never did it. So I think at some point, like, the town of Tiverton needs to step into the 21st century, do something that's going to eliminate all of the recyclables blowing all over the place, all of the crows shredding bags in my front yard, the trash all over the town, and this is the way to do it. And if we give ourselves a 6-month time period, we can come up with a solution for the pay-as-you-throw component and put it out there, whether that's a sticker, annual sticker that goes on the bins or whatever the case may be. But I'm sure we can come up with a solution that's both palatable to the voters in this town and also increases the total amount of dollars that we put back into the budget for that item.
And that's fine. I'm just not prepared tonight to commit to doing that in 6 months. I am happy to have, again, the DPW director and administrator come back to us within 6 months. Doesn't have to be 6 months. It could be much quicker with a plan on us to consider to do that.
And then we could look at it for like the next budget cycle.
So I would suggest that if we have our solicitor help us, Rick and I, work with the vendor to see how we can reopen this, because it would be basically a 3-year contract. But somewhere within that, you would want to reopen it to consider going to the automated. And then they would be able to rebid that. The trouble is, I don't know if that's fair to do that for the other bidder. I think you'd be locked into this. It would just be, instead of being, I don't know how long they would keep allowing to do the manual before they would want you to convert to automated.
That's a fair point. Not to mention the vendor also has to procure the bins, distribute the bins. Like, they need to know when it's going to happen.
Right.
And again, my personal preference is to hold the council's feet to the fire. We need to make a decision. We need to move this thing forward.
Again, and as. for
Well,
clar-
wait. Correct. That's your opinion, John.
Correct. That's why I said it was my opinion.
We need to move forward with a trash contract tonight, is what we need to move forward with. And whether or not at some point in the future we decide to go to automateds, because for one, I'm not sure, I'd rather do some type of survey or something if we can with residents to get their perspective on it. And see what they think, because I think there are some valid concerns with some folks around where do they put these bins when it's not their trash day. The heaviness of them, even if they're the smaller ones for some of our older residents or disabled residents. There are a host of, to me, issues that I think need to be thought through. And I appreciate the environmental aspects of it very much. While at the same time, there are ways to try to help mitigate through education and like, which I know doesn't always work as well as what we want. But I personally am just not ready to commit to that tonight.
Mr. Chair?
Yes?
Just one more piece, just because I personally experienced this when I lived in Newport. They awarded the contract to Waste Management. They had the bins. There was the usual uproar of people saying, well, I don't want the big 96-gallon bin. I want a 64-gallon bin. And, through the political process, that seemed like it was going to be the end of the world and the death of the contract. And lo and behold, here we are, however many years later, and they're still doing automated. There's no issues. I think the number of people that would be opposed to going automated is going to just dwindle and dwindle away. So,
Jay, and then we're going to move to a vote somehow.
Okay, so what we're dealing here is with three things, really. The trash contract, whether or not we want to go automated or stay manual. And then if we go automated, how we're going to pay for the difference, which could be an increased bag fee, which it wouldn't be. We wouldn't be doing bags. Or it would be a sticker. I can tell you that the automated pickup with the bins, and certainly an additional fee, is going to be very controversial. Now, how long that lasts, I don't know, but it will be controversial. And we're going to need to have public hearings of some sort about it. We just can't ourselves jump out there and say, we're the parents, this is what it's going to be.
All right. So if someone would like to make a motion, I'm going to suggest it to them. If they don't want to take this, that's fine. That we award a contract to MTG Disposal for wait a minute, how many years? It's on my other sheet. 3 years with the option to increase up to a total of 5 additional years in 1 or more year increments for manual trash and recyclables at initial cost of $1 million a year. All these escalated by CPI annually, or escalated or decreased by CPI annually. Yard waste disposal, white goods, and then an addendum to be negotiated by the administrator and the director for the disposal of white goods and bulky waste, and the trash and recyclables at a $3,500 cost for the schools, and direct the town administrator and DPW director to develop a proposal for the council to consider within 6 months from tonight for the possible move to automated trash and recyclables.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just one piece.
Yep.
Thank you for the 6-month component.
Any further discussion?
You did ask Chris and I to listen to it, and
Yes.
I think your motion is well phrased.
Thank you. You okay with it?
I'm good with it. He needs some help from legal though, too. Let's work with the vendor.
Yep. All those in favor? None opposed? Thank you. It was a great discussion. It was a big topic, so thank you for your patience, everyone. Rick, don't go away. We have more. Premier Fence, discussion and possible vote to approve bid award to Premier Fence LLC for guardrail installation. I imagine this one's going to be a little bit less complex.
Yes.
This,
I just gotta get to that heap of paper. Yes, thank you, Mike. I would like it if the town council approved the award of the bid to Premier Fence.
for $79,870. Is that accurate?
No, those are unit costs. I don't know why that has a total on it. It's the total of what their bid items
Oh,
are.
okay.
But it would be by linear foot, by each, by,
Okay.
it really shouldn't have a total. Those are by components, correct?
Well, if I may, it doesn't make any difference in this case because there was only one bidder, but the intent of the total is so you can compare A company to B company to C
Right.
company. But in this particular case, it doesn't matter, and you're not obligated to buy this or have this installed. It's just a basis for comparison.
It's if needed.
If needed, yes.
So this is when somebody smashes a guardrail.
Right.
Or if you want to add, for instance.
Add one.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, okay. So you get to, you have some control over that unless we have lots of smashed guardrails somewhere.
Hopefully they're on state roads.
So then the motion would just be to approve them as the bidder, using the bid that they submitted?
Correct.
Yes.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I'd like to make a motion to award the bid to Premier Fence LLC for guardrail installation.
Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Moving on, Rick, to discussion and possible vote to approve bid award for Fogland Stormwater Improvements contingent upon sufficient funding.
Yes, happy to explain or clarify, et cetera, et cetera. The town received, they were one of 9 municipalities in the state to receive a grant to design stormwater mitigation. And we then applied, I give all the credit to Brian James, who applied for the grant via Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank. That was approved, but the reason it says the award is contingent upon sufficient funds being available is because the bids came in higher than the anticipated amount when the construction estimates were done. So what, if the town council wants to go ahead with the improvements, then I would phrase it something along these lines. Approve the contract award to Skirka Construction in the amount of $238,200, contingent upon the town administrator, town solicitor, DPW, and the grantee project manager confirming that sufficient funds are available. And the sufficient funds available, Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank, the town previously approved fund amount, additional grants that are received, donations. And all required documents, paperwork are received from the contractor. So, a nutshell, if I may, approve contract award to Skirka Construction in the amount of $238,200, contingent upon the town administrator, town solicitor, DPW, and grantee project manager, confirming that sufficient funds are available and all required documentation is received from the contractor.
I have somebody who wants to make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Second. I have Joe seconding it. Thank you, Rick, and you'll make sure you give that in writing to the clerk.
Yes, happy to do so.
Quick discussion.
How much money are we short, Rick?
That's what I was just.
That's what I was gonna ask.
Me too.
Yeah, great question, about $10,000.
Okay.
We are working towards, with the bank to try to rectify the issue.
They're gonna try to get it for us. Let them try to get it for us first. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Okay. Rick, discussion and possible vote to approve $11,000 in parts to repair 2016 Elgin Road sweeper, which you had mentioned earlier. So this runs side by each with the budget transfers, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And there is an estimate, Mike, in there from CN Wood in the amount of $10,357. I rounded up to $11,000 because frequently, once they start taking things apart, you find you need more parts.
Do I have a motion?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the $11,000 in spending for the Elgin Road sweeper as requested by the director.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
He's not coming back up here, right? Okay.
I think we're done with Rick.
All right, hey.
Early night fever.
Administrator Cotta.
So we went out to bid for the audit services for the town. This is just a regular financial audit. It came in at $136,500, which is actually $300,000 more than the last bid that we had.
300,000 more?
$300 more than the last three-year bid we did. But we also provided you Narragansett, which is a very light community to us, what the bids were for them. It's a little sticky that was on the page. So we actually think Sahady does a pretty good job with the amount of money. It was a single bid. We didn't have anybody, we actually thought there'd be other bidders.
Nope, not for that price.
So
Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to award the professional audit services contract to Hague, Sahady and Company, PC.
Second.
Got a couple seconds there. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, now we are going on to Chief Jones. Discussion and possible vote to fund advertisement for amendments to Tiverton Code of Ordinance, Chapter 78, Division 2, residential parking, to allow resident stickers for the parking from Bottom Street to Bay Street on Canonicus and Hooper Streets. You basically want to put this out. This was based on the input that we had from the neighbors down there. So you want to put this out for public hearing?
Yes.
Everybody has it in front of them. Any questions as to why or not, why we should or shouldn't put this out for public hearing? If not, go ahead, John.
Just one question before we go. When we go to public hearing, could we expand the streets that the sticker program applies to?
I'm sorry?
Or would it have to be in the advertisement?
So say that again, I'm sorry.
So we're looking to expand the resident stickers for these streets as listed, but if we go through the public hearing, we want to add additional streets, could we do that, or would it have to be named in the?
I think they have to be named, right, Chief?
We're not adding your street.
No, I'm not asking for my street.
No, you're saying, so if you wanted to, and I'm not suggesting this, if you wanted resident stickers on my street, after the public hearing, could we add my street?
Yeah, that's the question. Or Riverside Drive.
I think we could. It would be, it would, yeah.
At the public hearing.
Right, we have the public
Okay.
hearing, and then after the public hearing, we decide how to move forward with it.
Then in that case, I'd like to make a motion to advertise for amendments to the Tiverton Code of Ordinances, Chapter 78, Division 2, residential parking to allow resident stickers on a bunch of streets.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
Thank you.
Next one is mine. Again, this is just to move it to public hearing. This is the ordinance amendment to district use regulations to disallow anywhere in town a crematorium going forward. This does not affect anything that's already in the pipeline. It would only be those going forward. And we do have the response from the planning board at the regular monthly meeting in early May. They unanimously approved a motion finding that the proposed amendments to the Tiverton zoning code regarding crematoriums are consistent with the comprehensive plan. And their motion further recommends that the council investigate alternatives to allow crematoriums in limited areas under careful restrictions that guarantee public health and safety. With that, I will make a motion and look for a second that we advertise this for public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes?
My only concern, and I agree with doing this, but is it appropriate to do this before the appeal?
There's no effect on the appeal, Chair.
Right.
The optics aren't bad.
They're already in.
Optics are what they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's my only concern.
Has no legal ramifications on it.
Right, and we've been clear with that since, I mean, I've been clear with that since I put
This
this
came
in.
out before you brought this up
It's come
before,
up a couple of times.
before the planning board even had made.
Right, right, it was brought up when the concept was first put before the
Right.
planning board.
But I agree it needs to be done.
Yeah. Any further discussion? Do I have a second?
She seconded.
I seconded it.
Second. All those in favor?
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Counselor Janik. That's a she and pointed at you like a savage.
So I think this next one is pretty straightforward. You have in front of you 8K, which was the executive order that declared the state of municipal emergency. It coincided with the public health emergencies that were done by the presidents and the governors. And now that the outbreak has been declared no longer a pandemic it is an endemic. Would entertain a motion to repeal Executive Order 2020-13.
I move that we repeal Executive Order 2020-13 of December 14th, 2020.
Second. Discussion?
Go ahead.
And maybe this is me just misremembering when we did this, but I was under the impression that when the governor's declaration expired, this automatically expired, but I don't see that
Yeah, I
language
mean,
in
this
here.
is kind of pro forma.
Okay.
Yeah, but I do want to note that I believe that our town personnel overall, our town administrator, our town president, our fire, police, and lots of other folks did a wonderful job of helping to manage us through that period, so thank you.
Yes, they did.
Then we did L&M already, so we're down to N.
We have to vote, so.
Oh, sorry. Motion is before us to repeal that executive order 2020-13. Effective today. And all those in favor? Unopposed? Thank you. N, discussion and possible vote to amend resolution 2023-003, Special Election Charter Review Commission to cancel election or reschedule election to November 7, 2023, and adjust due date for reporting recommendations. In discussing this, and Todd, I don't know if you have something more on this, with Mike earlier today, Mike Marcello, he's not certain we can cancel the election in totality because it is part of the charter. We did make a good faith effort to get people to run. We were not successful in that. So we can either move it to November, or I think some discussion might be had about moving it to the next regular general election, which would be November of 2024.
Question.
Yep.
In the event that, like, let's say we need 11 members, we only had one, we hold an election, that person gets elected, let's say there's no write-in votes, what happens with the vacancies? Would we appoint?
I forget if the charter speaks to that.
I don't think it does.
It speaks
My
to
concern
budget.
would be more important would be, what about the write-ins?
Well, I'm just,
No, he's just
hypothetically.
hypothetically,
Yeah.
no write-ins other than Mickey Mouse, who doesn't count. Let me just see, let me.
It goes that deep into the weeds.
Yeah, I don't think the charter speaks to that, but I think it points out a very important piece, that when we
we
do
need to add
make
that to
amendments to
the
the charter,
Yeah,
there
this
are
is
some
one of the ones that needs to be amended.
aspects like that that definitely need to be addressed. See if I can, oh, you have it right there in front of you.
I think we
didn't
roll the
bring mine.
dice and see who the write-ins are. Could be exciting.
Really?
It's just a recommendation, it ultimately comes back before the council.
Okay, but people didn't have the time, energy, or wherewithal to take out candidacy papers now. You're gonna like have somebody, just, and we've had a few people in town that.
Budget committee, I mean, we had to go to the write-ins
Do
in the
you
budget
really want to
committee.
subject that to?
For the charter.
I would much
That's
rather see you
important for the-
re-canvassing and get them to take out papers.
So Charter Review Commission shall be elected for a one-year term. So the Charter Review Commission section doesn't speak to vacancies. There's a different, Joan, do you know where our vacancies in office? 12? Oh, okay. Would it be under yeah, maybe under elections, vacancy of elective, so should an elected position of town clerk, and that's not it, notwithstanding any other provision for all elected positions other than the clerk and treasurer that become vacant, the qualified candidate for that position with the next highest number of votes shall be appointed by the council to fill the unexpired. If said candidate declines, then it goes on and further down until either a qualified candidate accepts the appointment or until the list of qualifieds are exhausted. If it's exhausted, the council shall advertise vacancy and may appoint a person from the list of applicants for the advertised vacancy. So that's what would happen.
But you're gonna be required to appoint a write-in, whether you.
No, that goes to qualified candidates. So right?
Oh, I think.
No, writing gets it, yeah,
Yeah,
A write-in
Write-in
is,
gets it.
right.
Writing gets,
Right.
I would
it could be bad.
totally caution you.
But it's more if we had a vacancy after the fact. So if we had the 11 members and somebody withdrew
Then you appoint.
after they were sworn in, then we'd have to go to the qualified candidates who may not have, but if there's no other qualified candidates, a write-in is not a qualified candidate. Right,
No, because they haven't done the steps.
right.
My suggestion is you would go to the next general election. In the meantime, the council picks the top 5 items and the council does it. That's what it is. At least you'll pick the things that need to get done.
So at a minimum,
Well, as we did.
we have, well, we can either, I guess, continue with the schedule that we have, knowing we have no qualified candidates.
One
Oh, did he?
qualified candidate.
No.
No, he withdrew.
He withdrew.
Oh.
Yeah,
Stu,
he withdrew. So we have no qualified candidates at all. So it would be all potential write-ins.
It's exciting. Democracy in action.
and do you want to spend money to have this election separate from the November election this year or the November election next year?
I see, so now,
So to me, it's a cost item.
let me
I agree.
understand this. If we push the election date back to the regular election, we would have to reopen the candidacy period?
Yes.
Okay.
It would
and
have
we
its
can-
own schedule.
And we can do that?
Yes.
Well, I don't see, who's gonna file a charter complaint against you? Those who didn't run? Come on.
Fair
it's,
point.
Because we're already paying for that election in
Yeah.
November.
And you have no
So-
idea what you're gonna get.
right.
And the charter falls under the state rules, right? Charter falls under the state election rules, right? Am I right on that?
The
The
Charter Review
process.
Commission falls under Title 17.
Yes.
And it's like the town council has control whether the election goes forward or not. Similar to the governor has authority to move forward with the CD1 election. So they can't tell us what to do, only you can tell the Board of Elections what you want to do in the case of this election, either to reschedule it. In their opinion, it's either cancel or reschedule.
Right.
What are the ramifications for being beyond the charter review date? If it says every 4 years and now you're at 5.
It's every
It's
6
every
years.
6. Well, we did. We didn't get any candidates.
And I,
Do we have to ask for an extension?
To who?
We'll be asking
I don't
ourselves.
know.
The legislature?
No, I think the possibility would be somebody could file a violation.
Let 'em-
We would recuse. It would go, I think, depending on what decision he gets from the Ethics Commission. I know he's waiting on it. It would go to the
Municipal court.
municipal court judge. And if he can't do it, then it goes to Superior.
but you've done your due diligence.
I was just going to say,
Yeah.
how do you have an election when you have no candidates?
You give
Right,
warning.
why are we spending $17,000 for an unknown? We have no idea who's gonna be on that ballot.
I wouldn't
Right.
do it.
The taxpayers, I don't think it's fair to them to put that kind of election in front of them where they didn't have a choice and know what was gonna happen.
So
Go ahead.
just to make, so if I was going to make a motion here to kick this back to the regular November 7th election, we could do that? All right, so then in that case, I'm
Are you talking November of this year or
Yeah.
November of '24? Which would be the next general election. November of this year is the CD1 election.
But it's still within this year.
and we still have to hold it, so.
Yeah, I'm just clarifying, that's all.
Yeah, so my motion would be to,
So when do the ballot changes have to be made for that election, for November, for the CD1?
It has its own schedule, and we're certainly not anywhere near close to any of the
Okay.
deadlines.
Okay.
so there's
That's
still
why it's-
time for
Oh.
candidate
Yes.
declarations, okay.
Yes.
Well, in that case, my motion would be to amend Resolution 2023-003, Special Election Charter Review Commission to reschedule to the November 7th, 2023 election date.
Second.
And adjust the due date for reporting recommendations accordingly.
And I will second that.
Is that the actual date, November 7th, you're sure? I just don't know if, yeah, okay. Discussion? My only hesitancy is what Todd had mentioned. I don't know, because what we'd be looking at is pulling papers probably in July. Declaring, I should say, declaring.
I don't have it off the top.
Right, but relatively soon.
So you'll be in this vote again, potentially.
Right,
Right, and then you just kick it to 2024 if you have no candidates.
right. And are we likely to get candidates in the next month or so?
Flies flying around.
Or more likely to get some at the next general election cycle? That's my only hesitancy.
And we're within our time frame if we went out to 2024? When did we do the last budget, the last charter review?
2017.
November of 2017?
July 17th, no, July 18th, 2017. It was off schedule, as this one is off schedule.
So we would be slightly off, but again, that, somebody could file a charter complaint that we're not following to the T.
Well, I don't think we should worry too much about charter club. They are what they are.
No,
You're not intentionally breaking the charter.
I guess
Right.
my only point is, what's wrong with John's motion?
Yeah.
What's the harm, I guess?
Yeah.
Just kick it again in a couple
If-
months if you have to 2024.
If no one
Right.
pulls declaration papers in July, then we go, okay, well, obviously this isn't going to work, and now let's look at the following election cycle, and,
We'll extend it again.
you know.
so any other discussion? You have anything, Dennis? All those in favor of John's motion to move it to this November with dates changed accordingly? Passes. Okay. Unanimously. Council President DeMedeiros, discussion possible vote on FY24 budget. So you had at your tabletop
Oh, here it is.
a marked-up version of this for us to consider. And I want to point out, well, we will have to, so where it's highlighted in yellow, if we pass this tonight, that's where the date will go, today's date. But our tax collector had suggested some changes to align better with the collection process, correct?
Correct.
So you find that on page 3, new language is underlined in red, stricken language is in blue with strike-throughs.
So, and I would have one other minor addition to this, that to the extent you do approve it, that it would be like you do with some of your other things, like subject to all legal requirements. There's a legal requirement that this has to go before the Department of Revenue. I've been working with them for the last 4 or 5 days. We're talking about moving some very small, insignificant issues. We're talking pennies and small percentage numbers. And it's based on the fact that when we prepare this annually, and historically the way we've done it, we've taken the prior year's disclosure, because that's what people saw the prior year when they voted, and we married up what we're projecting for the current year. The issue is now the Department of Revenue is looking at it and said, well, you actually had a final budget last year. You had a final assessment last year. So we're talking about differences of like from 3.21% to 3.22% to 3.23%. Well, the tax rate change goes from 2.47 to 2.48. And the tax rate may change from $14.97, we actually think it's going to go down 2 pennies. So they're really minor issues that we're dealing with, but that has to get blessed by them. So, and that will change whatever advertising that we do for this. But as it stands, everything is fine, it's just those final minor tweaks that we have to get through the Department of Revenue. So if it's somewhat changed, it's based on Department of Revenue's calculations.
Discussion.
Well, no, that happens.
Happens every year, but
Happens
this is
every
the
year.
first time we've got a new clerk from DOR, and she's being very thorough, and I don't question, her math does work, but when we prepared this, we were basing it on projections, not on actuals. Now, they're somewhat changing their rules on how we project this.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the unified budget, inserting the appropriate dates where highlighted and subject to meeting all legal requirements as outlined by the administrator.
As amended.
As amended.
May I add anything?
Of course, Rick.
Thank you. I am only bringing this up in case it was a mistake. I went to multiple meetings, but I didn't go to every one of them. And if it was done on purpose, no problem, but if it was a mistake, there was landfill. I found this when I was working on more stuff for today's meeting. The 5530 landfill operations, testing and permitting was wiped out. Was still, and maybe that was put under some other item. And as I said, I wasn't at
I wasn't
every
here for
single
that.
meeting.
I had no knowledge that Rick pointed out to me today. I don't know if there was an anticipation of, well, we're gonna carry money over, or
How much was that?
The request was for 75,000. We're not sure exactly what it's going to be, because again, the testing will be different when the landfill is closed. But zero won't cut the mustard.
I believe that was moved over to pay-as-you-throw. You changed the ordinance to include
Okay.
both the trash as well as the continued
Yes.
testing
Yes.
on the
Yes.
landfill.
Okay, all right.
Okay, terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you all.
We just didn't have we knew there was a reason for it, we just had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
Any
Good
other?
catch, Joan.
I'll wait for John to come back with any other discussion. I think we all did a very good job of working through this for our first year of this new process.
I don't think we did anything dumb.
And we had, you made a motion, who seconded it? Oh, Joe did, okay. All right, so, John, we were just waiting for you to come back so you could
Sorry.
vote on your motion, that's okay. Motion has been made before us to pass as amended with the legal requirement language. I see no further discussion, all those in favor? Aye, congrats.
So the next three items are basically going to wait for after executive session.
Yes.
Awesome.
And then there's a couple of minor announcements that we were going to announce that you'd asked the solicitor and myself to work together, put together a letter out to CRMC, which we have done. It's posted on our website. I know there are a lot of people looking to see that letter, and we can make we'll try to put better instructions on it, but it's right on the front page. It's also buried in our document section as well. It's a very voluminous attachment, so it's not something that we've been passing, it's fairly thick. It's, we think it's fairly well comprehensive, but it does cover all the issues that the council has been addressed for the last year or so with this. So it is on our website for anybody who's looking for it. So the second item of general announcement is, and I know a lot of people have noticed it, the company did a fairly decent job of advertising what they're doing. Is Rhode Island Energy is putting in duct banks from the substation off of Fish Road to the solar farm on Brayton Road. They've been putting in their initial pull stations, so that's why every 100 and some feet there's a square. We're kind of, I know the chief of police and the DPW director did meet with them last week to talk about the roughness of how they were put in it. They should be a lot smoother. But I'm forewarning people that while there's been some disruption in traffic, it's going to get worse. Because once they get done putting those pull stations in, they'll be starting, and I don't know where they're gonna start from. I don't know if the chief can address this, but I know that one way or another, they're gonna be trenching from box to box. And there are gonna be road closures. And there is a well-published a rerouting map. People need to take consideration and try to plan their travel outside of these construction areas, because it will be very well delayed if you don't. And they did put up some pretty good ways of getting around these things. It may be a few more minutes of your day's travel, but it needs to be considered before you get stuck in an area where you're not going to be able to get through. Most of this is going to happen after the school's out, because they still got to go down pretty much Brayton Road yet, I think.
Yes, sir.
I think there's 7 pull boxes they're putting on that road.
Correct.
So, but I don't know what end of the project they're going to start that trenching from.
So I think they want to try and start it from both ends.
Okay.
So, and the plan is, and the administrator is right, the DPW director and I met with the representatives of Green. The DPW director actually went out there with the foreman to express some of his well-formed concerns regarding the condition of Bogamash Road and Fish Road. They've agreed that they're going to take a look at that and they're going to fix it, and I believe they've already taken care of some of them, but I know that we're going to keep an eye on it, and I know the DPW director is, for lack of a better word, he is absolutely on it. But this project's been delayed for over a year. They were trying to coordinate it when we shut down that DOT replaced the bridge at the Trout Pond so we could avoid some other detours. What they're doing now by laying these banks down, the road is still open. But the plan after July 10th or 19th, during that week, I believe, is to completely shut the road down 5 days a week, 24 hours a day. So there'll be a police presence there, And because they want to try and expedite it and get it done by Labor Day, it could be doing it from two different ends of town. So that means that if we thought it was bad now, to quote the administrator, it's getting a lot worse.
So my one question is, when we have the concerts at the park?
Well, it will affect that.
But the
Oh, it's on
concerts are
other
on the
side.
weekends.
So- and-
Yeah, the concerts aren't on the
Thursday.
weekends.
Oh, they are? Oh, Friday night?
It could be okay, because what's going to end up happening is when, during the work week, they're going to asphalt probably about 70 feet at a time.
Yeah.
And then the banks in the ground themselves, they're using concrete that they have to pour, and before they cover, it's got to cure.
Yeah.
So that is the delay time, which is why the holes will be open.
Yeah.
Which is why they need the detours, which is why they need the police presence. But on the weekends, they're going to plate it off, cover it up the best that they can. So traffic will be open on the weekends, but then it'll shut down probably first thing Monday morning.
And to the extent the road is closed, those people who live in those areas will be allowed to be escorted in and out of there to get to their
Emergency
homes.
vehicles, stuff like that, because we'll be there.
Right.
But as far as normal traffic while they're working, yeah, it's going to be difficult. So it definitely means that getting access around town is going to be a proposition for sure, depending on certain areas of the town, and alternate routes. And we're gonna keep it on social media. I know Green's been very good about posting updates on Tiverton happenings and their local social media. We're gonna carry the same thing. But right now, it has been, we've seen the delays and the backups definitely during certain parts of the day.
It's going to continue and get worse.
It's gonna get worse because we're gonna shut the whole road down.
Question.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So in the evenings, are the roads open?
No.
So the concerts are Friday nights, and I think they, like 6-ish.
That should be okay, because I'm assuming, because the weekends they will be, so they're gonna probably end of business on a Friday night.
Yeah.
Friday night, and, Friday night, Saturday,
will
Sunday, first thing Monday morning, we go back to
They'll open
closures.
up Friday evening for the weekend.
And that's the plan.
When they repave, are they going curb to curb, or are we gonna have, okay.
So one thought, because there are still people who don't use social media, if they have any flyers that they can put out at some of the stores, Coastal Roasters, Black Goose, Tom's, CVS, places like that.
Library.
For the library, for the stores that will allow it.
Sure.
That might be good for people who just don't do social media,
Nope.
or, they see it, oh, I saw something last
Right.
week, I can't find it.
Right,
Oh,
and I know
have
they did
this.
the public hearing, not too
Yeah.
many people showed up, it was basically the residents around Booger Marsh Road.
Yeah.
But I will remind them about doing something, and also we have the reverse 911 system, so when this gets closer, if we wanted to kind of just target the whole town, we can send out a flash and ring everyone's phone, or do something on there. If they have the app or they're registered, it'll come up as a notification on their phone.
Okay.
So as far as paving curb to curb, I'll defer to Rick, but my understanding is there's a cure period, there's a time, kind of what they did on Fish Road years ago when they put the water line in, they did a patch there. It'll look like that if it doesn't have enough time for it to settle in and cure. So I don't know how long after, it may look like and I don't know, is it gonna be a year before they actually do the final on that?
We like to go through at least one winter season, and then they have to maintain that patch or
Right.
that trench with asphalt, so it's not a terrible ride. It has to be an acceptable ride. And then they come in and they mill 1.5 to 2 inches, and then they put a smooth asphalt surface. But again, the concept is let the trench settle, even though it's not supposed to, over a winter season, and then do curb to curb.
So it will be,
Yeah.
it will be when it's done, but it won't be
24
imme-
months.
It won't be immediate.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be 24 months. It'll just be one winter season. So if they are done by fall, this winter season,
Next
hopefully
spring.
by the spring, we should be up. and running.
And it's my understanding that, I know Brayton Road is curb to curb. That's a town road. Boogamarsh, my understanding, wherever they work, for instance, the North Brayton up to Fish Road, is curb to curb. I'm not sure about Fish Road. Fish Road may not be, because I guess one reason is DOT is going to be doing further work.
Right.
So maybe Fish Road is only gonna be half. But I don't know that, that's just something that may occur.
Okay. Other questions? So one last thing, it's not on here, but just to note, because I think you guys were talking about it beforehand when I banged the gavel. If you saw in this kind of times, ACLU put out their report, is that what you were talking about?
Yes,
now?
it was.
Yeah. the report about access to minutes, live streaming. There were 4 items, and then.
Whether or not the packets were
Right,
made
so
public for
they
the,
dinged us on 2 of the items, but I know you were talking about taking care of it. When I read it, I texted the exec director of the ACLU and said, Steve, you're wrong, and he agreed. He said it is hard to find, but he agreed that we do. This was about
our packets.
giving access to the backups to our packets online, so they will put that in the corrected version that we do that. And if you were talking about putting it somewhere else?
Well, I got a call from, I had given feedback to the person who wrote the article, and they responded, same thing. Once I gave them the path to the data, they agreed, yes, it's available, and they will correct it. But they did offer some suggestions for us to improve our website so that it is easily found. So we will be making changes.
Good. Thank you. So, I will entertain a motion in a second to go into executive session. I don't need to read all the laws, right?
What does that make you do? I think you do have to read them all.
Town Administrator, 10A, Town Administrator, RAGL 42465A1, Personnel Job Performance Annual Evaluation for Police Chief Patrick Jones, notice given. B, Town Administrator, RIGL 42465A1, Personnel Job Performance Annual Evaluation for Deputy Police Chief James Costa, notice given. C, Town Administrator, RIGL 4246-5A1, Personnel Job Performance Annual Evaluation for Deputy Town Clerk Jean MV, notice given. D, Town Administrator, RIGL 42465A2, Collective Bargaining, update on Teamsters Local 251. E, Solicitor Marcello, RIGL 42465A2, litigation, David M. Rose versus Town of Tiverton, NC-2023-0170, update. F, Solicitor Marcello, RIGL 42465A2, litigation, Highland Ridge Farm versus Town of Tiverton, NC 2021-0042, update. G, President DeMedeiros, RIGL 42465A5, discussion related to the acquisition or lease or purchase of real property for public purposes / conservation, wherein advanced public information would be detrimental to the interest of the public. And H, Police Chief Jones, RIGL 42-46-5A, for any investigative proceeding regarding allegations of misconduct, either civil or criminal. Do I have a motion?
Second. Oh, so moved.
Motion was a second.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.